Oh, okay. Here we are. And while I wait for a couple of you to show up, which again, as usual, I don't give you much warning. I'm just gonna have a little bit of my espresso, giant espresso. And I might also intermittently sip a little bit. As you guys know, I'm not much of a red wine drinker, but this is Nero d'Avola from Sicily, and it's actually really, really good. So I'll be tasting that a little bit as I progress. And okay, I see that some of you are starting to pop in. Just let me know if the sound is okay. I think I plugged everything in this time. Let me close the door so don't wait. Right. So yes, how history affects you and why it's important, and it does affect you. It's kind of interesting actually, because when I was in high school, I dropped history. I had some pretty crappy history teachers, to be fair. One of them was this guy who just joked around and like basically pissed about for the whole term, and then like just before exams, he'd like just fill in boards worth of stuff, like just, and you'd ask him a question and be like, I wouldn't have time for that now. Just copy all this down and study it. So he just used to piss around and just talk crap most of the lesson. And he wasn't the worst one. He was all right. I mean, he was a crappy teacher, but he wasn't a bad guy. And then after that, we got this new young guy who was a full-on communist as well as gay. And, you know, let's put it this way. 10, 15, maybe even more, maybe even 20 years after my brother and I finished at high school, we happened to be in the same city once at the same time. And we went out for dinner at this restaurant. And lo and behold, there's the history teacher, 30 years on, surrounded by like his like older students. And my brother, I was just like, my brother just walks up there and goes, "Oh, here you are, Mr. Wilson, with your little proteges, hey? Just like the old days, huh?" He just walked off. It was quite entertaining. Anyway, he was a full-blown communist, this guy, and all he kept going on about was the Bolshevik Revolution and how, the poor oppressed Russians. Now, I didn't know a damn thing about who the Bolsheviks were or what they did, or I didn't know anything about Russia. I'd never even met a Russian. And I was like, this can't possibly be relevant to me. So I dropped out. Only finding out later, you see, I've got this like instinct, this animal instinct about stuff. And then you find out who the Bolsheviks were, what they did. There's currently a very funny and very historically accurate tweet on X, something about the Bolsheviks killed like millions of like Russians or something, and Elon Musk like posted something about it, and under Elon Musk's like tweet, there's like a whole retinue of comments about who the Bolsheviks were, who the leaders of the Bolshevik Revolution were, what they did, and how many people they killed and why. And it's quite an education if you are not aware of that stuff. But now the funny thing is that as a result of me dropping out of history, what that resulted in was I started reading up stuff about history of my own. I started figuring things out about history of my own. I didn't have this as as deep a brainwashing hadn't been done on me with respect to human history. which ironically perhaps is why I managed to write The Face on Mars. Those of you that are familiar with it, I'm just going to put the blog here on the chat, because for those of you that may be new or don't know, whatever. So if you go there, I am very crap at marketing myself, but there's a bunch of stuff there, you know, like books and other things. And The Face on Mars is really, if you want a primer on the history of the human race, starting from whenever. Um, and again, it's not because I wrote it, it's because it's true. The Face on Mars goes a very long way towards explaining you an alternate version of human history, which is absolutely, um, backed up by very solid evidence. And those of you that are, that subscribe to the Kurgan TV, which is, again, if you go to the blog, there's a link to it. You can go see what Kurgan TV is. There's a series there on the lies they told you about history, and it's chock full. It's I'm gonna start it up again this year, and do more videos on it, add videos. But there's 160 videos on there already on different topics. And the lies they told you about history is massive. I mean, I'm just sort of scratching the surface of various eras. And it starts out with the history of Earth, which you've been lied about. You know, who built the Great Pyramid of Giza? It was not for Khufu. It was not built by those guys. The Sphinx is like 10,000 years old, more than 10,000 years. It's about 12,000 years old. And again, this is solid evidence. But the problem is that the truth does not get told. What you get told is a lie. And it's a really uncomfortable concept, right? But if you want to have a much better handle on reality than you currently do, and I don't care who you are, this is a fact, yeah. You have to start from the premise that we're living on a world of lies. That this world is, as the Catholics say, it is under dominion of Satan, and he's the prince of lies. Once you start to realize what's really going on, that absolutely makes sense. So you got to question all the history that you think you know. Now, unfortunately, when you start to do that, you're going to run into people that are put there intentionally to divert you into dead ends and rabbit holes that have like just nonsense at the end of it. People like the flat Earth people, that's a psyops. There are many other like little things, the alien invasion thing, that's a psyops. And again, how do we know this? Because Werner von Braun is on record, and the lady that worked with him um, has gone before Congress to state this. That Werner von Braun, who actually headed up the whole Apollo program, it's when people say, "Oh, nobody went to the moon. The Americans didn't go to the moon." Well, it's true. The Americans didn't go to the moon. The Nazis went to the moon. It was Werner von Braun and a guy called Du Bois, which has been scrubbed from Wikipedia. He used to be on there. It's gone. If you're interested in this stuff, you look at my video, like number 3, I think, about the moon landings. Because, yeah, I'm skipping now because, yeah, a bit of rule on internet. But anyway, what I was saying, yeah, I do think we have gone to the moon, but not the way that we've been told. So video number 3 on my YouTube channel, I think it's number 3. It's one of the very early ones, discusses that with some details. And yeah, most of the footage that you've seen about the Apollo landings, those are fake. Those were done like in a studio in America, in California, actually, by what's his name? The famous film producer guy. It'll come to me. One of you guys knows who I'm talking about. The guy who did also Space Odyssey 2001 and whatever. Kubrick, that's it, Kubrick. And he admitted it on his deathbed. He basically said, yeah, it was all fake and bullshit. But that doesn't mean they didn't go to the moon. They did. They couldn't actually go the way they told you they went. It's not real. And anyway, the reason I'm talking about the moon stuff and the pyramids in Egypt and so on is because we all grow up and we're told these things and we believe them. Because like a little kid, right? If you tell your little kid that, when he sleeps, the sky disappears and becomes like filled with unicorns. He doesn't know any better. He believes you because you're his dad or his mom or whatever. And in a similar vein, you go to school and you think, oh, well, these guys are nice. These people are cool. They're trying to teach me stuff. And, oh, cool, that's how maths works. And you see that maths works and whatever. And they tell you some other stuff about the Crusades or, the pyramids or Egypt or the Romans. And you believe all this stuff. Now, the reality is that even the technology that we had in the history that we know, right? The history about the Romans, the history about the ancient Greeks, the technology that existed back then, in some cases, is superior to the technology that we have now. Now that blows people's minds. When you tell them that, they're like, I can't possibly. No, I don't mean they had PCs and the internet, but there's a very absolutely credible evidence to demonstrate that they did have radio. And it was hidden, it was like secret technology, and they used it from temple to temple. And if you go to my blog and you go to the blog, there's like a search me like link on the right hand side. Click on search me and type in their ancient radios and then read that blog post. And there's actually many historical writings that back this up, because information seemed to be able to travel between city states or between people, between various provinces of the Roman Empire, much quicker than you could do by simply using messengers, which was what they had. And the reason is that apparently the temples where the gods were worshipped were actually a form of primitive radio, which would work with crystal. It probably wouldn't work now because the airwaves are so polluted with like all sorts of signals now. But crystal radios, by the way, there was an ancient book about that I used to have, and it's in one of those many thousands of books that unfortunately got lost in one of my moves, and then my brother put it all in storage in a valley that got flooded. So yeah. But the initial radios, that you could initially make radios with crystals, with like bits of stone. So that seems to indicate the ancients had this ability. There's various artifacts that got found. Again, I've blogged about this stuff, and some of it's on KTV as well on the Ancient History series. They had like computers that basically, analog type computers that like a little bit like the Babbage engine, a smaller form, could like figure out all sorts of astronomical data, which, by the way, you cannot do if you think the Earth is flat. You cannot predict where the moon is going to be, or the sun, or when a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, or where the stars or where the planets are going to be, a week from now, never mind 6 months, a year, or 10 or 100 years from now. So they knew how to do this, which means they knew that the Earth was round. And again, we have writings that prove this. The ancient Greeks knew that the Earth was a sphere and so on. So when I tell you that history matters, it affects the way you see reality, and the way that you see reality affects your day-to-day life. Now, in part, this stream was prompted by the fact that I finally managed to reissue, if you like, the Crusades by Harold Lamb. So if you go to the blog, you'll see it's the latest blog post. And if you go to Books I Wrote, you click on the ebook store. If you go to Books I Wrote, there's a link there to the ebook store, and you'll see it. It's on there now. So the ebook version is like £8.50. Like I do things in British pounds because that's just what I'm used to. So it's £8.50, which you can get it cheaper. You can get it for $1.20 or whatever, $1.50 or $3. And it's a crappy sort of version. I've really taken care to do as good a reproduction as possible in e-format. It's got all the illustrations in it. I tried to put the illustrations in the same place in the text as they were in the original. And I've written an introduction which explains in more detail, like, why I think it's very relevant. Not just relevant, I think it's pivotally relevant to today, to us now. And also I explain a couple of the choices I made in constructing the book the way that I did. But there's also going to be a hard copy version on Amazon It takes a few days for the approval, so hopefully everything is okay. If I have to make some changes, it'll take another few days. But within a week or so, the hardcover version, for those of you that like me like to have the original sort of paper. This is the one that this is my version of it, which I picked up for like £5. Unbelievable deal on this old bookstore in London, and it's yeah, I picked it up for like £5 along with a couple of other books that were really quite, yeah, there it is. You can see the price was written by hand on it, and it's, I don't know if you can see that, it was knocked down from like 12 to like 5. I picked it up for £5. Incredible. So I've made a hard copy version through Amazon with a nice cover. You can see on the blog what the cover looks like. For those of you that wants the paper copy, which I frankly, I recommend. It's a lot more expensive. It's $35, so it's going to be about $35 instead of $8. And it's going to be a two volume set, which I've got the second volume. It's going to take me a little while. This was a work of love. It took a long time to get it correct. I will do it with the second volume as well, which talks about the Islamic side of things. But it's going to take me a little while, a couple of weeks or more, because I've got other things to do. But anyway, why would the Crusades be relevant now? It's absolutely relevant for many, many, many reasons. I'm going to give you some examples now to try and make you understand a little bit what life would be like if your generic narrative that you have in your head about things like the First World War, the Second World War, and those of you that are like under 40 probably don't even know crap about the Second World War because they didn't. It's like, I don't know, yeah, whatever. It's like there's a Hitler guy who was a bad dude, and then like, yeah, we won. That's about, Keep in mind, I saw a video today on Telegram of this American woman who's 28 years old who had no idea that lemons come from trees. She's got a lemon tree in her garden, and her friend was like, "Why are you buying lemons? You've got a lemon tree there." And she's like, "Oh, I don't know what that means." She's like, "Well, why don't you just pluck the lemon off the tree, and don't I have to do something to it before I can eat it?" These people are going to starve and die as soon as there's an economic crash. But my point is, imagine we all have this generic idea, and it's very, very deeply embedded. Again, I write fiction books, and I strongly recommend, and it's not just because I write them. There's a fiction book, right? Nazi Moon. It's some light reading. It's fiction. It's entertainment, science fiction. This is the omnibus of the 3 books that have taken 30 years to put together, really. Because I had all the 3 books in my head for about 30 years. But, I'm 54 and I moved 54 times and I've been divorced twice. So I've had an interesting life, and it's taken me a while to find the time to do this because there were other books that were more important for me to put out. But if you read this, it'll give you a very, very good idea of the kind of process that a person might have to go through in order to realize what the truth is about certain things. This starts off with the premise that right from the beginning, you get it, it's not really a spoiler, given the title, that the Nazis basically retreated to the moon. They didn't really lose the Second World War. They retreated to Antarctica. Project High Jump, which is a real thing, went to Antarctica, got their ass kicked. That really happened. And the Nazis had a few more years to build up their Honebu craft, or UFOs, or anti-gravity machines, whatever you want to call them. And they basically relocated to the moon. And then there's been kind of a Cold War with the whole of Earth kind of agreeing to tacitly pretend the Nazis are not on the moon, and that there is no such thing as anti-gravity. This is a real thing. Anti-gravity exists, and it has existed, and we know it has existed absolutely empirically since 1928, when Thomas Townsend Brown, with his little Bakelite thing, built a little anti-gravity device. And then he developed it and developed it and developed it, built flying discs that worked better in vacuum. And then he couldn't get funding because all the private people that started to fund him died in plane crashes and accidents and so on. So he went to the US Naval Research Laboratories and said, okay, guys, how about I just give it to you? And the US Naval Research Laboratories, which is the most, short of DARPA, they're the most powerful, richest, wealthiest organization of skunk works on the planet, bar none. They were militarily the most powerful military element on Earth. Russia has now taken that over, and China, I believe. USA is probably like third place, if that now. But for a very long time, the US Navy was the most powerful military entity on the planet, and they've had that technology since 1954 from Thomas Townsend Brown. They've had it since 1947 when Tesla died, and they basically took all his documents. Now, do you really think that they've been sitting on this shit for 70 plus years and not developing it? You're dreaming, right? So, although my book is fiction, it's based on a lot of very factually reliable information. Now, long intro, as you guys know, I tend to ramble, but I do come back to the point. Imagine for a moment, if you will, that my fiction book is absolutely correct and true. Imagine that you've been lied to the point that there are Nazi bases on the moon and Mars, let's say, anti-gravity machine are a thing, and you've just been kept here like a fucking stupid frog in this little ball on Earth when we've got anti-gravity machines flying around, being able to go to other planets, other galaxies. Yes, I know, it's my farmer chic. Not just the first layer, but the second layer's got holes on my elbows too. It's what I wear when I work outside. So imagine that. I mean, how would your brain go if you suddenly realize that the Nazis have got bases on the moon to this day? They're there. How would that work in your brain? Now, it sounds fantastic, right? It sounds like a completely crazy, unrealistic idea. But just for a moment, just pretend that it's true. Pretend that you have undeniable evidence of it. For whatever reason, a little spaceship comes down to you, like some Nazi guys in uniform. They go, hey, dude, chill. We're not going to kill you. We just want to show you something. They kidnap you. They put you in one of their little UFOs. Whoop, they fly to the moon. You can see it, from the port. Like you actually take off. You go all the way to the moon. You go on the moon, you walk around on the moon because they've got gravitors that hold the atmosphere in, so you don't even have to like wear a special suit or anything. And they show you like they've got like all sorts of plantations underground, and also on the other side of the moon, that's on the back side of the moon that we don't see from Earth. They've got all sorts of bases all over the place, and they tell you, yeah, they're the Americans, all the guys that matter, they know about us, and they know they can't take us out here because otherwise we'll nuke the shit out of them too. It'll be like a massive war, like what happened on Mars. You know that Italian guy that wrote the book The Face on Mars that proved this stuff kind of happened, that proved it empirically with things that you can't deny, like astronomy and geology and the planet itself and the evidence on the planet itself, which geological evidence, I'm not even talking about artifacts. So it's just mathematically obvious that what happened on Mars was not natural. And imagine the Nazis do that. So they've done this, they take you back to Earth, and now you know, right? You know without a shadow of a doubt that this is real. Imagine if you had just that one piece of data, how it affects every single thing that you believed in your life, how it affects the choices you would make about what work you would do, about what type of work you think is even relevant anymore. It would be kind of a little bit depressing, right? Because at first you'd be like, what the fuck? I wanted to work in aerospace engineering. Well, that's all a fucking lie. Oh, well, I wanted to work with cars or planes well, that's all fucking pointless and a lie because we've got anti-gravity devices. We don't need roads. So the whole civil engineering, milieu that is engaged in building roads all over the place, train tracks all over the place, airports, planes, cars, trucks. Gone. Don't need any of that shit. Now, I've lived with this reality in my head since I was 26. So I know that it can be a little bit of a crunch. That's just anti-gravity technology. That's just if you add that in, and we have that. It exists. It's absolutely there. Is it dangerous? Yes. Are there reasons why we shouldn't give it to every Tom, Dick, and Harry? Yes, yes, yes. But the reality is that I, personally, people like me, and people that think like me, would be absolutely fine to have a bunch of anti-gravity devices and have a planet that works on anti-gravity devices. We would need no roads, we would need no planes, we would need no trucks, we would need no fossil fuel-based anything. We would not need power stations or power lines, because an anti-gravity device is actually a little device that can also create energy out of zero-point vacuum fluctuations. So you get a little anti-gravity device this big to run your city block or your town, whatever, a little bit bigger. And we've all got little car-sized or truck-sized or yacht-sized spaceships that we just park outside our home, and we can go anywhere. And not just on Earth. We can go and visit other planets. And given that an anti-gravity device can create a wormhole, if they're big enough, if they're powerful enough, you could literally be exploring the galaxy right now. But instead, you have to go to the petrol station, pay $2 a liter to fill up your car, drive it on a tarmac road. Now imagine living with this in your head since you're in your 20s, like I have. And you can think, oh, this guy's crazy, it's all nonsense. Bear with me, because there are proofs for these things. I'm not just, I'm starting out with a big picture just to show you how important this stuff is and how it affects your day-to-day life, okay? And I've worked in civil engineering. I've worked in the business of building roads in certain places. But on one hand, I'm there going, well, this is just fucking, wasting my time. I could be on a mountaintop, looking at flowers or the sky or trying to count raindrops. It's about the same usefulness, except I'll probably have more fun trying to count the raindrops. On one hand. On the other hand, I come across some fraud, some deception, some lies that bug me. I expose them and I get fired. And I'm like, who gives a shit? And there's people around me that started the careers on the same sort of track as I did. And I meet them 10 years later, and they're directors of giant firms, they're CEOs, they're making shitload of money. And they look at me sort of like, this guy is smart. This guy was actually better than me at my job. And it's he's still in the same kind of position or maybe even less, or what, he's trying to farm olives now? He's got no fucking money. It's what crazy fuck. And I'm like, yeah, I don't envy them their life or their jobs or their money. Sure, money is useful. Don't get me wrong. I've never been one of these guys that's oh, money doesn't matter. Unfortunately, it's all fake. It's all bullshit, but it matters. It makes a difference, right? If you've got enough money, yeah, you can do more or less what you like. You can have better quality of life. You can have better quality of food. You can have better quality of pretty much everything. If you don't, well, you struggle, right? So I'm not saying money is not important. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that it's when I looked at trading, I started out when I was between 16 and 18. I made quite a lot of money by playing on the stock market in Africa. And I thought, man, this is easy money. I could do this. And I looked into it a little bit and I started to play a little bit with it. And I was I realized what it was. It took me a few weeks to realize what the stock market is about and how it actually functions. And I'm I couldn't do it. I was this is absolute bullshit. It's the same. I started to do an economics degree in university. A long distance one, an email, not email, that wasn't email at the time, it was by mail, and I lasted 2 months because all the aspects of economics are based on absolute nonsensical theories that make no fucking sense. And people like Vox have written books about economics and have studied economics. I think he's majored in economics. And he writes about how the free trade is all nonsense and blah blah blah. And I'm that guy spent years getting a degree in economics, which I don't think he's ever used, which is fine because I don't think anyone can use a degree in economics to do anything, to be honest, other than lie. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to like consume that level of deception and nonsense, pretending it mattered or it was real or relevant, because it isn't. The only reason it's relevant is because you're in a room full of liars who all lie to each other and they all know they're lying. And you have to go in there and you have to like pretend to be one of them and pretend to lie with. I can't do it. I just couldn't do it. For the same reason, I couldn't work in the stock market and become a trader. And as a civil engineering kind of guy and QS, I've built offices and I've worked in buildings that are banks that are. We were doing the construction side of things, and we walked through the trading floors and see how these people act and what they do. They're all on cocaine. They're all like having sex with anything that moves, including each other, including each other's wives, random farm animals. I'm not fucking kidding, right? The toilets, or one of the banks that we had to do, like redo the toilets in, we had to put the grouting, we had to use special tiles, we had to use special structures for the cubicle, for the toilet cubicles. To give you an idea, the grouting of the tiles on the floor, they were like super thick granite tiles that you can't break basically unless you take a jackhammer to them. And the grouting between these tiles had to be a special epoxy that is the same one used in jails because it doesn't corrode due to urine. Now, this is not a standard thing that you do in normal bathrooms, even in restaurants or whatever. And that's because the traders intentionally piss on the floor. The cubicles had to be built extra sturdy, so they were like laminated fake kind of wood, but they were really metal doors with like struts up and above, so they couldn't knock the doors off the hinges. The back panel inside the cubicles was a stainless steel 3 mil thick, like metal plate, but it wasn't plain because they would scuff it and scratch it. So it was like it had all these like embossed little bumps with little lines. So it was just like kind of it almost looked like a cheese grater kind of effect. So even if you scratch it, it doesn't really look like anything. And the toilet holders had to be stainless steel metal things so that they couldn't rip them off the wall, because remember, the wall is just a laminated piece of steel as well. They couldn't just knock it off the wall and put the whole toilet roll in the toilet to clog the toilet, because that's what they did. So they would have to like pull it out, and they wouldn't have the patience to do all that. And then if it comes out, it's still not like one compact roll, so it's easier to unclog the toilet. And we had to get them slanted, heavily slanted like this, which is, they were more expensive. They had to be specially built, because if you had the toilet roll holders, just could only hold 2 rolls. If they were flat, they would use them to snort cocaine off them. The toilets didn't have, like, the tank of the toilet was inside the wall, so they couldn't do anything with them. These are traders, right? Basically, we had to build the toilets at a high spec so they looked good, but really the specs of the toilets inside the traders, offices, had really the same specs as they have in hardcore jails, because that's who they are. It's soulless, it's soul crushing. So part of the problem of realizing what is really going on in the world is that once you realize the level of deception that you've been subjected to, it can be depressing, it can be demotivating, it can make you think like, what the fuck? Especially if, maybe you got a PhD in, hopefully it's not some nose-picking degree like, gender studies or whatever, but let's say you got a degree in medicine. Let's say you're a doctor, you're a GP. And once you start to find out the level of deception and lies that, in the pharmaceutical companies and in the medical profession that you've been subjected to, you've got good intentions. You're a good guy. You want to heal people. You want to be a doctor. You want to be a cool person that helps sick people. And then you find out a tiny percentage of what is really going on in the medical profession. And you're like, what the fuck? These people have made me an accomplice to their absolutely inhuman shit. And it's in everything. Now, things like engineering are, let's say, the least corrupt, because you can't really, that's kind of reality. It's like Russia and propaganda, you can do all the propaganda you want, but when you got a hypersonic missile up your ass, well, your propaganda doesn't count for much. And you can have all the propaganda you want, but if you build a bridge and it falls down and like 20 people die, you're never going to work again, and you're probably going to go to jail. So civil engineering is one of the more steady and reliable professions that you can work in. And of course, keep in mind, you're building roads, which we don't need. You're building power stations, which we don't need. You're building pylons for, fucking microwave towers or energy pylons, which basically we don't need. Because think about it. There was a short story written like this, where instead of phones, people had teleporters, and they could just teleport anywhere. So people didn't use phones anymore, because it was just like, oh, well, if I want to see Bob, I'll just teleport to his house. And, people couldn't be alone anymore. So there was this spree of murders that started happening because people were freaking out. They couldn't be left alone. I don't think that would happen. I think even if we had teleporters tomorrow, people would still use phones. And you can tell that because, come from Generation X, so we didn't have mobile phones when I was a kid. We only started to have mobile phones when I hit my 20s. And so if you wanted to get a hold of somebody, you picked up the phone and you called them. There was no texting. There was no such thing. And all the young kids now, and I see it, with my daughter, I see it with like younger people. They're like, maybe they're attracted to somebody, maybe they want to see someone, maybe they want. I remember like, being a teenager and calling up and getting this girl's number, like at a party or something, and then calling her up and like feeling like, oh, this is kind of like, but I really I want to see her. So I'd call up and I'd ask for her, and maybe her mom picks up, and that's actually what happened. I just remembered, her mom picked up, and I could hear it in her voice. She was an older lady, and by the way, I saw the mom later. She was a very attractive older woman, by the way. And she picked up, and I said, "Oh, hi, I want to speak to, whatever her name was," and she goes, I could hear it in her voice, the voice of an older woman in retrospect, going, "Oh, this is a boy that likes my daughter. I wonder what he's like." And she's like, "Oh, yes, and who should I say is calling?" But very polite, And I told her my name and said, "Okay, just hold on." And and then she called the daughter, and it was like, I don't know, that interaction was definitely more difficult than sending a text, but it was also better. It was also worthwhile. It was better doing it. Now, if you call some woman up and some girl up, and you're a young guy and you're like, "Hey, hi, I'd like to see you," she's like, "Oh my God, he's a creep." She's probably gonna freak out to the point where she'll tell her friends what a stalker you are, because you actually picked up the phone and called her. And that just fucks people up. It's like, but now if you this is intentional, by the way. It's not. If you pick up this book and you read the first book, keep in mind the first book. This is 3 books in one, right? But the first book was written came out in 2011. But you got to keep in mind that book I had in my head since the mid 90s, and I didn't change it. And the stuff I talk about in terms of the technology and so on, and what people are trying to do and how they try and wreck your brain, by using mobile phones. Because as soon as mobile phones came out, it took me about 6 months to have one to realize, oh, this shit is to make you retarded, because you're not going to read a book. See that stuff at the back there? See all that? That's the Oxford English Dictionary. I spent hours and hours and hours, I was 16, 17, studying in the UK. I used to go to the local library where they had exactly that in even bigger format. They were even bigger. They were like leather-bound, 2-foot tall folio things, reading through it, looking up words like Illuminati, because it had like 2 pages full of information on that. Just reading a dictionary. Okay, that's what I used to spend hours doing that shit. Okay, I'm a little bit autistic, fine. But do you know the level of intelligence, of education, of intrinsic knowledge that you get from doing that and being able to do that? Instead of your attention span being limited to sending out 4 emojis in a row because you can't be bothered to type out the words. Okay, says money comes and goes. Yeah, it does. I've been poor to the point where to eat I had a bag of flour, some salt, and tap water. So I'd make these water pancakes. That's what I've been in that level of poverty. And I've been, to the point where I've given money away, like thousands, to like people that needed it because I could afford to and it didn't bother me. Um, so yeah, it's true. Shadowhand says, "You ever read any Dr. Robert O. Becker?" No, I don't. I'm not good with names, but I don't believe I have. Anyway, the point is, if you in the notes of this live stream, a link to a Ron Unz blog post. It's not my blog post. It's Ron's blog post on his website, on his blog. And if you only read one blog post, it's quite long. It'll take you like several minutes to read it. But if you only read one blog post in your life, if you only read one blog post seriously in your life, I would strongly suggest you pick that one because it gives you, in a way that I don't have the patience to do, because the books that I've written, I have written to give that information to other people, but essentially the information that's in those books, like The Face on Mars, the Systema book about Russian martial arts, Reclaiming the Catholic Church, about the Catholic Church, the infiltration, what happened there, those non-fiction books, I wrote them because, yes, I want to share that information with other people, and I'm trying to put it in a format that other people can appreciate. But I did that stuff for myself. I'm curious for my own purposes, and I don't need that level of detail to make my conclusions because I've been reading a lot. Like in this the Crusades, in the introduction, I explained there that I've literally read thousands of books, and people say, "Oh, that doesn't make sense." Look, if it was only one book a week that I read throughout my life from age 7 till you know my 50s, that would be over 2,000 books easy, right? 52 weeks, let's say 50 weeks in a year, right? 50 weeks in a year for 40 years. Let's not even, it's more than 40 years, but whatever. 50 times 40 is 2,000, right? That would be 2,000 books if I only read one book a week on average. I went through periods of my life where I was reading a book a day. Sometimes I was reading a book every 2 days, like big books every 2 days, regularly. Like from the ages of 16 to 19, I probably read at minimum an average of 3 books a week. And that's a pretty constant thing. Now with life, work, that drops a bit, but there's been times when it was high. So on average, I've literally read thousands of books. And it's, once you do that, and they're not just all fiction books, a lot of them are nonfiction, you get a pretty decent sense of like when a book's talking nonsense and when a book's like kind of real. And, for example, one of the reasons I've got the full set of the Oxford English Dictionary is because they tell you the origin of each word. It was a work of basically two authors, the Scottish guy and an American guy who was in jail, actually. If you should you should watch the film with Mel Gibson and, is it Sean Penn? I forget who the other guy is. But anyway, it's a brilliant, brilliant film. I forget the name. The Professor and the Madman, I think it might be called. It talks about how that was put together. And keep in mind that any really useful development on planet Earth was always done by one man. Tesla changed the world. It wasn't Einstein that changed the world. It wasn't Edison that changed the world. It was Tesla. Tesla changed the world. And he was absolutely not supported. Why these bugs keep coming? I'm trying to talk to you guys. And they do this regularly. They hide. And then they start buzzing around when I'm live streaming. Oh, see, getting clever. Learning to hide. Oh, it'll be back. So, the fact is that once you understand the reality of how badly we've been misinformed about just about everything, your perception of things changes and shifts to the point where you might start to think, well, how does electricity really work? Maybe I can figure out how electricity really works, and maybe I can figure out how to build little machine that creates free energy for me. And you think it's impossible, but it isn't. There are people throughout history that have done this, and they tend to get killed or bought out or disappeared. You know, and there's so much stuff like that. Now the thing is, if you start to realize this stuff, you think, well, what good comes of it then? Well, a few things. First, don't get depressed. All right, figuring out the truth is not something to be sad about. It's something to really be happy about, because the truth is always better than a lie. Even the white lies, the truth is always better than a lie. Always. Everything that is wrong on our planet and with humanity, everything comes from the fact that human beings are too weak to face the truth, which means that they lie, and they lie a lot. They lie to themselves first, and then they lie to everybody else. If human beings were honest, there is absolutely no reason this planet would have any crime, any bad things happen, and the evil people would not last in it. So, it is important to be honest. It is important to know the truth, because that's the only way you can fix things. That's the only way you can make it better. And it affects your life. Because yes, initially you sort of go, fuck, it's all a lie, I'm living a lie. Yeah, you realize that it's a moment of shock, but then you adjust, and you adjust in a way that they can never fool you again. Once you realize the level of lies, your own life, your own things, the things that begin to matter to you become very different. Now, unfortunately, as human beings, we've been trained as part of the big lie. Part of the big lie is Protestantism. The giant lie of fake Christianity, which is Protestantism, and today, including so-called Catholicism, because the Bergoglian sect of Vatican II is not Catholic. It is absolutely Protestant in its entirety. It's satanic. Now, that doesn't mean that the average Protestant is a Satanist. It means that the whole structure of fake Christianity is satanic in origin. And it mechanizes people. How does it do this? It tends to give you a binary way of thinking. Keep in mind that Protestantism throws logic and reason out the window. Catholicism never has, never done. Which is why Catholicism is responsible for figuring out the scientific method, the actual, real scientific method, which means observation, testing, engineering, essentially real science. It's Catholics that created that. You might not like it, you might not believe it, go look it up, right? So the zeitgeist of the English-speaking world is Protestantism. It's not real Catholicism, it's Protestantism, which means that you tend to think in a binary way. You tend to think like black, white, yes, no, good, bad, true, not true. And life is more complicated than that, and you need a little bit of nuance. You need a little bit of like a little bit deeper than black, white, yes, no. Especially when you start to look at things like your life and what's important. The so-called red pill movement. I don't agree with that. It's mostly not good because, yeah, there are some truths there, but they become absolute. The pickup artist movement, they're full of shit, because what do? They take a half-truth and they make it an absolute. And it's nonsense. It's fucking nonsense. If you go back to original Catholic thought, if you read Thomas Aquinas, if you read St. Augustine, if you read the actual Bible, the New Testament, and actually read it as is, without the Catholic version, right? It's got all the pieces, not the one that got removed bits by Martin Luther. And you look at what Jesus says and how he says it and what he's trying to say. It's absolutely not stark black and white. Yes, there are things that are stark black and white. Yes, there is justice and injustice. That's true. But it's not like, oh, you steal a loaf of bread and therefore you're a criminal, you must go to jail. No. That's a Protestant way of thinking. And keep in mind that Protestant England hung, drew, and quartered people for stealing a loaf of bread by the hundreds per year. Yeah? The Catholic Inquisition, which has been vilified throughout the ages, in 200 years killed a grand total of less than 200 people when you include pedophiles, witches, traitorous Muslims, and traitorous Jews. You're talking about less than 20 Jews that pretended to have converted to Christianity, but really were like helping the Muslims to invade Spain. Less than 20 Muslims that had done the same thing. Less than, it was, I believe, a dozen witches, women that were doing all sorts of freaky, evil, nasty shit. And only 163 convicted pedophiles. Now, in order to be burnt at the stake for being a pedophile back then, it wasn't whether you were gay. It had nothing to do with that. You could be gay and no one bothered you. You had to repeatedly rape a child. Keep in mind that back then, a 13-year-old was considered a man that could run an army. Repeatedly rape a child, be unrepentant, and refuse to say that, Jesus was Lord. So in 200 years, they killed less than 200 people when you include all these categories, okay? In England, they killed multiples of that number every year for stealing bread. That's what Protestantism does. That's what happens. Because it creates a black and white, yes, no, good, bad way of thinking, which is wrong. It's just wrong. So, it also limits your belief of what you can do because, oh, I'm just one guy. I'm just one guy. And they've brainwashed you to believe that you're just one guy. You can't do anything. Well, let me tell you, just one guy stopped the whole of Europe from being Persian. One guy. Do you know who he is? Most people haven't got a clue. Leonidas. Do you know who Leonidas is? If you're a regular on this channel, you do. But go ask your friends. Do you know who Leonidas was? If they do, they only know it because of a graphic novel written by a guy who, by the way, is not particularly a good dude. Leonidas was the king of Sparta, was one of the two kings of Sparta, and when the Persians were going to invade Greece, which would have meant the whole of Europe, because that was the passageway, and Athens was heeing and hawing, and oh no, we can't, and politics this and politics that, Leonidas said, well, I'm the king, I've got a personal bodyguard of 300 Spartans, and I'm going to go and stop the Persians. And he went to what is called the Hot Gates. It was a narrow passage where the Persians had to go through to get to Greece. It wasn't just 300 Spartans. There were also about 4,000 Greeks. But the 300 Spartans started it, and they went there. And they held off the Persian army, which by various different numbers could number as high as 1 million or as little as 100,000. But basically, 300 Spartans stopped tens of thousands, at the very least, probably 100,000 or more, Persians for days. And they only got stopped because they got betrayed, and one of the guys betrayed them and showed the Persians the way to go around them, so they got encircled and all got killed. To a man, they didn't, none of them survived, except for the one guy that was sent back to warn the people. The Persians went like, fuck me, we got 100,000 guys, 300 of these dudes kept us here for like a week. What the fuck is the rest of them going to be like if we actually invade? And then they tried it by sea, and a similar sort of thing happened, and they like gave up on it. One man, Leonidas. If you're a European, the reason you're not a Persian is because of Leonidas. One. And a couple of other guys. Jean Parisot Le Valette. He was the head of the Knights of Malta. Saladin, with 40,000 Muslims, cannons, and powder and swords and guns, invaded Malta. We knew that Valette knew that this was going to happen, so he had 6 months to prepare, and in 6 months, him, about 3,000 villagers and 600 knights built two, not one, two stone castle keeps with thick walls in preparation for the assault they knew would come. If Saladin had taken Malta, from Malta, it was a pivotal point to attack the rest of Europe. Now, the Muslims had been raiding the coasts of Europe, Spain, Sicily, and so on for, hundreds of years, kidnapping women and children, murdering, and doing everything. And if they had taken Malta, it would have opened the gateway to Europe, who was at that moment in time in the throes of their own internal stuff, so it wouldn't have gone well for the Europeans. One man, Jean Parisot Le Valette, who led 600 knights, that's it, that's all he had. They stopped 40,000 Muslims. One guy. Tesla, The alternating current wouldn't exist without Tesla. If we didn't have Tesla, you and I would not be having this conversation. We would not be able to have all the technology that we have now. And Edison, who's vaunted as the guy who invented the light bulb and blah, blah, blah. No, Edison was a thieving, lying scumbag who lied to Tesla, used and abused him, stole a bunch of his stuff, didn't give him any credit, and tried to keep him down. Einstein was such a... No, Einstein was a plagiarist. He was incestuous. He abandoned his own son to like practically starvation and his first wife. And he married his cousin, his first cousin. And he stole everything that Einstein is proclaimed as having done was already present in books in the 1800s, late 1800s. Read up, you go to haroldaspen.org, which is a site a very good friend of mine maintains for me, and you'll see there's a book there called Physics Without Einstein. Look it up. Now, let's have a quick look and catch up with you guys. DTTW says, I asked a girl out years ago when at university. She asked if I followed her on Instagram. No, haha. Then Snapchat. Also no. I asked her for a phone number and it sounded like she was trying to remember her own number. Yeah. And look, for guys in America, I'm sorry for you guys because I think the Americans have got it worst of all. I really do. Unless you're living in like, buttfuck Alabama or whatever. Maybe you got some cool, hot, sexy Southern girl that likes to shoot guns and fish. But even then, I don't know. I don't know the United States that well. I know certain parts of it that I've been to and spent some time in, and they're the absolute worst. San Francisco, California was honestly like I don't think Sodom and Gomorrah can be any worse than that. And then I was in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and I found that like a great place full of great people doing great things with a gray sky, in a gray background, with gray lives, eating great food, doing great things for great purposes. So kind of depressing. I have no intention of going to anywhere like New York any more than I have any intention to go to New Delhi. I've been to Canada, and I think there's some elements of Canada that can be saved simply by the vast distances and rural sort of areas. But in the cities, they are as corrupted and degenerate as third, shit water, as I call him, from the French, third eau, shit water. The son of Fidel Castro that's running Canada. He's created an absolute shit show there. So yeah, I think the dating scene in America is horrific. The intrinsic plasticality of American culture, if you want to even call it culture, which is it's not the Americans' fault. It's a First Nation that was created by Freemasons, for Freemasons, by Freemasons, in Freemason principles. So it's essentially a wasteland of pain, I think. And I feel even sorrier for the women in America, to be honest, because I feel terribly sorry for the men, yes. But if there is some woman that's got a sensible attitude to life in America, I mean, talk about slim pickings. First of all, she's surrounded by her own, peers that are all completely brainwashed to the nth degree. And secondly, where's she going to find a good guy? I don't know. It's, frankly, I think rural Europe and possibly rural America, I have my experience of rural America has been pretty limited to like Flagstaff, Arizona, which is it's not exactly a crossroads, the outskirts of Tucson. And, and I'm sure there are places in America that are, rural places with like some very good parents that actually bother to like really educate their kids about all sorts of stuff that normal school doesn't. I'm sure they exist because they do, but they're few and far between. I don't think they're the mainstay. So you know, unless you're in, I don't know, Wyoming, Montana, or someplace like that, and in a tiny community where you got the chance to meet up with, like, you know, other peers of your age group that have been educated properly, I think you got it hard. And the relationships are completely, you know, washed over by the zeitgeist of Protestantism, which is, oh, well, when it gets a bit hard, you leave, you divorce, you that. While original Catholicism, no, you're married, that's it. It doesn't matter if your husband becomes a whoring cocaine addict or your wife becomes, you know, a random diseased prostitute that like bangs every guy in the neighborhood. It doesn't matter. Either way, you're together until death do you part. You know, the the running joke is that like divorce is not acceptable between Catholics. Homicide, on the other hand, you know, it's a joke, right? But I'm just saying. Imagine what life would be like if people are honest and you know that the person that you decide to be with is the one that you end up spending the rest of your life with. Imagine what society would be like if that was the going zeitgeist. Now realize that for a time in history, it was. And that's a time in history where we built huge cathedrals, artworks that we can't compare with now, and the level of human and humanity conception, piety amongst real priests, dedication and sacrifice among real crusader, real Christians, unparalleled, unmatched since then. And that was the whole of society generally had this take on it. You don't know that. That's been taken from you. You don't know that because it's been covered with lies, which is why the book, The Crusades, which, like I said, is available for like $8.50 on the ebook store. And if you wait a week or so, or a few days, it's going to be on Amazon as a hardcover for like $35. It's a lot more expensive, but you know, hardcover. So please, please read that book. Because once you've read that, let's say you're a convinced Protestant and you know that the Catholics are wrong, they're pagans, whatever. Read The Crusades. Read that book. Okay? And it's one of the most objective works of history I have ever come across, because the guy who wrote it wrote 2 volumes. This is volume 1, The Crusades. Volume 2, The Flame of Islam. This guy was a freak of nature. He knew how to read, speak Latin, French, Arabic. A lot of the documents at the time were in Old French, by the way. He went to the various museums and he collected the information from both sides of the conflict to match them and see where they, you know, where they told the same story or not. And he tells you when they do and he tells you when they don't. So it's absolutely objective. It's a real work of historical research that is unparalleled, in my opinion. But it's not just that. It's based in fact. It's based on true things that are, you know, confirmed. And once you read that, you get an appreciation for what Catholicism actually is. Not what, you know, you've been told on TV all your life, not what you've lived through all your life, because that's the same as I have, right? And then you start to appreciate why zealots like me that are sedevacantists have got a point. Read that book, and then try and ask yourself how Protestantism could possibly begin to compare. Keep in mind that the Crusades happened over 50 years after the schism, right? That happened about half a century after the schisms with the East. But the Catholics went to help them nevertheless. And what men went to help? What kind of guys? What did they do? They sold all their property and they took their families, including their wives and children, on this massive undertaking that was dangerous as hell, got a lot of them killed, and they did that, and they held on to those areas over the sea, as it's known in French, the Outre-mer, for 200 years, with the Eastern Orthodox betraying them at every turn, backstabbing them, and trying to kill them off by joining forces with the Muslims to do it. That's what Catholics are like. Now you read that book and then you tell me if that was fake Christianity. You tell me if you think that the Christians, the Catholics that went on the Crusades were like mistaken about anything. Yeah? That's why it's important. You need to know this stuff. they've been lied to you. They've lied to you. Your history has been taken from you. Please read that book. And you know what? If $8.50 is too much for you, go get the free PDF crappy version online. Go get a $1.51 from Amazon on like your Kindle that like is, you know, the layout sucks. I don't care, but please read that book. I've honestly read thousands of books. That book is in my top 3 for sure, and it may well be the first one, the top book of all. I'm not telling you that because any money comes to me of it. You know, if 1,000 of you all buy the ebooks, okay, great. That would make a little bit of an impact in my life. Okay, if 1,000 of you bought that ebook, that would make a little bit of a difference to my life. It wouldn't let me buy a tractor or anything, but it, you know, would give me probably a couple of months of time where I could put more books like that out. So spread the word. If you want to help me out, great. I appreciate it. I appreciate every single one of you. But I'm not sitting here thinking, hey, you guys go get that book so I can be rich. That's not the point here, all right? Money has never been my primary motivating factor. So let me catch up with the chat here. So Wade Wilson says, his anti-gravity tech talk reminded me, have you heard of the UFO alien mess that happened in Brazil in 1996? There's tons of witnesses of the ships and 2 creatures that ran around the small town. No, I haven't heard that, Wade. So if you've got a link or something, you know, I'm kind of a little bit over the whole alien invasion thing because, again, if you read The Face on Mars, which I wrote when I was 26, and then it's been updated, like 10 years ago, I did an update on it with like a lot more like historical information that's actually relevant as well to the technology specifically. But nothing in the book was changed because everything in the original that I wrote in 95, the predictions I made in there have only been verified. So, you know, it doesn't need updating. Just like the Crusades. The Crusades was written in 1930. That's why it's public domain now. It's absolutely relevant today. It was written nearly 100 years ago. My book, The Face on Mars, was written nearly 30 years ago. Absolutely relevant to today. Please believe me. These are like references books that you should probably read. Roald Dahl books last year got automatically censored last year via Kindle. That's put me off ever reading from a Kindle. I agree, but my ebooks are not from Amazon. That's something that's very important. Thank you for pointing that out. My ebooks are from my e-store. I create those ebooks. Part of the reason I've taken all my ebooks off Amazon. Some of them are still on there because they've got like a 90-day policy, so they're coming off towards the end of February. Ebooks in some of my books is because of the layout. It just comes out shit. And I've hired professionals to do it, and it still comes out shit. So it's telling me that the quality of the stream is being lowered. So I hope this is still going through. But so like my ebooks are my ebooks. They're not. So if you've got them on a reader, unless Amazon is going to go to like books that you didn't buy off them and change them, then I don't know, maybe that's possible. But, you know, my books as a hard copy, they're available on Amazon. They're almost all available on Amazon as a hard copy. Some books in the near future will only be available as an ebook because Amazon probably wouldn't print them and they might knock me off for some of the stuff that I will put in some of my upcoming ebooks. Like there's one on relationships, women, men, you know, like the whole sexual relationship sort of thing. So there may be books that are only ebooks, but until I find, you know, either build my own printing press or something, I don't know. So yeah, I appreciate, and I prefer physical books myself. So I understand. I'm not telling you to buy my ebooks. Okay, I'd love it. I'd love it. You know what they say? You need 1,000 fans. If I had 1,000 fans that bought everything I produced, like ebooks, I could sell my ebooks at like $5-6 a shot. And if I had 1,000 people buying everything that I put out, that'd be enough for me to like live and just write more books and give more information and do more of the stuff that I like doing. So yeah, I'd appreciate you guys spreading the word, but you know, it's not gonna, the reason I'm telling you now is not really gonna change my life probably. Alchin Podcast says, "Hey brother, I'm a member of the Catholic Church. I'm no theologian, but should I leave the church? I have a family. Much appreciated, Tony." Tony Nod, go to my blog. It's right at the top of the chat, gfilotto.com, and read up on sedevacantism. The Catholic Church still exists, but it's not as big as what you think it is. And if you're a nominal, always raised so-called Catholic Church, but you've been raised in the Novus Ordo, the Novus Ordo is not Catholic. It's absolutely satanic. It's fake. It's a lie. So don't bother. Oh, Cordell Mitchell has just sent me a $50 super chat. Thank you, sir. Which, by the way, it's going towards the 1911 fund, which is still here. It's not going anywhere. That fund is just being, I gotta admit, if I get enough super chats to get me to 10 or 20 grand, which I don't expect will happen anytime soon, but if that happens, I'll get a tractor before I get a 1911. But until then, that's the 1911 fund. Gaijin TV says, "I've noticed Chinese sense of justice is situational." Yeah, it's absolutely different from European sense of justice, but that's fine for them. I have got no problem with the Chinese people doing Chinese things in their Chinese way. Cool, and stay there in China. I've got no problem with Saudi Arabians doing Saudi Arabian things in their Islamic ways in Saudi Arabia, and stay there. Great. I'm all for diversity, real diversity. You do your thing in your place and stay there, right? And if you do come to my place, which should be properly Catholic, which currently means sedevacantist, because those are the only Catholics left, and keep in mind that as a Catholic, only Catholics are Christians, okay? So you can call yourself a Christian, but you're not, as far as I'm concerned, unless you're a sedevacantist Catholic. And not only as far as I'm concerned, as far as the church is concerned. And if you read that book, The Crusades, you'll understand why. Because being an actual Catholic has got certain implications to it that you're just not going to do if you're one of these Jesus is my boyfriend types, I've got no problem with any nation or people saying, we believe this or we're going to do things this way. That's fine. Do that in your place. And if anybody comes there, they should respect your ways, absolutely, or suffer the consequences. By the same token, when you come to my place, you're going to respect my ways or suffer the consequences. That's real diversity, and I'm absolutely all for it. Okay, says the Moors. Luis Vega says also Vlad the Impaler. Yeah, Vlad the Impaler stopped the Islamic invasions, but I do think that Vlad the Impaler was a sick fucking individual. If you actually are aware of what he did. He impaled men, women, and children and babies. Yeah, I can't reconcile that. There is no way I can reconcile that. And you can say, yeah, okay, I think that the side effect of having stopped the Islamic invasion was a side effect. I think he was an absolutely freak, sadistic fucking monster, and the fact that he stopped the Muslims from invading Europe is a side effect. So that's how I see it. Gaijin TV says, electrocuted an elephant? Come on, Edison. Yeah, Edison did that. He killed an elephant just to try and prove that, Tesla stuff is unsafe, which is absolute fucking nonsense. Wade Wilson, for the Chinese, it looks like Xi is shaping up to be remembered forever. He disposed of hundreds of corrupt weasels. If it becomes a strong Christian nation, they might remember him as a catalyst. Yeah, I don't know that that's really going to happen, because keep in mind that China has got more notional Catholics, in other words, Novus Ordo pretend Catholics, which is not their fault. They're being fooled by their clergy. It's got 60 million of them, which is like the population of Italy or England. But they're Novus Ordo guys, and their so-called bishops and so on have been totally abandoned, by the way, by Bergoglio, even though they're Novus Ordo guys, because Bergoglio is getting paid something like $2 billion a year or something to China wants those bishops to be like in Soviet Russia, the Eastern Orthodox. Why they're schismatics is partly also because they've got no real claim anymore to apostolic succession. Apostolic succession is when, from the apostles, they trained bishops and they lay hands on them and they said, okay, you're okay to teach what we've been taught by Jesus. And that unbroken link of people only exists as in sedevacantist Catholicism. It used to exist in Orthodox Christianity in the East, but when the Soviet Union took over, they basically appointed the bishops. They were state-appointed people. They were like KGB-like appointed people. So they no longer really have a claim to proper apostolic succession like the Catholics do. So, there's that. I don't know that, China is going to become properly Catholic, but who knows? Stranger things have happened in the history of the Catholic Church. Tides of Truth, hello, how you doing? Okay, he says, I wrote that way before you mentioned your ebook. Just a coincidence. Oh, very good. Oh, and thank you. Shadow Hand just bought, I just saw a little thing come up, just bought a version of the Crusades. So thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And guys, Cordell, thank you very much, sir. I always appreciate your $50, which you kind of do almost every stream. So I'm really appreciative of you. If I had 100 guys like you, I could do this every day, So I only need 100 guys like Cordell, 100 guys like Cordell that send me $50 once a month. I'll be streaming daily, honestly. I would. So rope in your family and friends. I'm crap at marketing, but please believe me, the stuff that I produce, I'm kind of like doing it for myself mostly, which is why I'm shit at marketing. But I promise you it's important. It's relevant. It affects the people that read my books. I get emails regularly now. I get emails from people that have read one of my books 30 years ago that refound me. And they're like, man, your book changed my life. And I'm not telling you that to tell you what a great guy I am. I'm telling you that because I want your life to improve in every sense. I really do. Cordell says, if you get a tank instead of a tractor, you can just put an implement attached point on it. Then you can have both a tank and a tractor. Unlike America, it's a little bit harder here to get a tank, but I think when the apocalypse comes, I think it'll be very easy for me to have a tank then. So I'm just biding my time, till the price is right, free. So, that's where I'm at. Luis Vega says, sometimes we don't get the hero we want, but the monster we need. Sad but true. That, in fact, most of the time that's the case, because let's say the apocalypse does come, right? And you guys have now been trying to form the Kurganet here, a little enclave of proper sedevacantist Catholics, which is happening. A friend of mine has now bought a property in. He's moved some people in, which are really awesome. We still don't have a contract for their rental thing, and they've already started painting and fixing the house up just because on a handshake we trust each other. Those are the kind of people that we want. Okay. Sorry about that. The stream got killed. I had to switch internet thingy. So hopefully you're still here. But what I was saying is let's say there is the apocalypse happens to tomorrow. And let's say I have my little team of dudes. And what would it look like if there were roaming bands of bandits and stuff? In order for you to secure security for stream quality is still crappy. Hopefully it's still working. If you had to secure an area like from banditry and whatever, you have to be brutal. You can't be like, he only stole. He didn't hurt anybody. He just was stealing some guy's car. Well, you can't just let that happen. You have to string him up and put his head on a pike, because otherwise all the other bandits are going to be like, oh, that's the place where we can just steal shit and do whatever we want and we don't get killed. So the guy who ends up taking over is going to be the most brutal person there. The guy who's willing to do the necessary stuff to do in order to keep things going. And And he's going to have, and when you get a brutal guy on top of it, of things, you're going to get another brutal guy who's like, well, I can't do that. And, so they're going to be internal fighting. It's vicious. It's like prison gangs, right? And then if you get a guy that's tougher than everybody else and he kills off everybody else, he's going to be a tyrant. And he has to be, because he's like, well, the only way that I can keep things going is by keeping this oppressive system to like make sure people don't fuck about, because they want to kill me. I've had several attempts on my life. I've managed to secure the area, but it's never permanently secure, So now to get a guy that's able to do all that and is a good guy is a very rare human being, because he has to have the potential to cause himself and cause other people to cause extreme level of violence depending on the situation, and yet have a foundation in justice and truth and honor and courage and all the virtues of a human being. What kind of men are like that? There is only one type of man that is like that. Catholic knights, which is, in the introduction, I explained this in more depth in this book, the Crusades, which is, again, if you go to my website, gfilotto.com, click on books I wrote, go to the ebooks thing. Actually, I'll make it even easier for you guys. I'll put you the link to the ebooks here. Hold on. There we go. So there it is. So if you're interested in getting this book for like $8, that's it. That's the link. Okay. So yeah, you're gonna get brutal people, but like one of the reasons that I also like the Crusades is because when you read what these guys were like, what the Crusaders actually were like, people compare, like, who was the best warrior? If you ask somebody who was the best warrior ever in the history of mankind, 9 guys out of 10 will tell you samurai. It's not. It's the Catholic knights. Look, compare, and look, don't get me wrong, the average samurai was a formidable guy. And the good samurais, the ones that had intrinsic, their own sense of decency and conscience inside of them, were absolutely outstanding people. But they were similar to the Romans. The ancient Romans would kill themselves similarly to the samurai if they got dishonored. Most people don't know that. The Roman soldier was an absolutely honor-bound soldier. He was kind of like a samurai. They had the same sort of thing. Some of them were condemned to death by their enemy, and they said, yeah, okay, but I got to report the news to Rome that we lost. And they said, yeah, but you're condemned to death. And he goes, well, I'll come back so you can kill me, but on my word of honor, I'll come back so you can kill me, but I have to go and give this information because there's nobody else left alive. And they let him go there to deliver the message, and he came back to get himself killed. Those are the kind of people the Romans were. But it's a pagan ideology. It doesn't have the tempering factor of mercy, forgiveness, justice, love that Catholicism has. So the most capable men that were of doing, on the one hand, the necessary, unfortunately ugly violence required to safeguard Christianity and Christendom, and yet at the same time be honest, honorable, beyond reproach in terms of their level of personal honor, Catholic knights. And one of the stories that I like very much, which I found out in Rodney Stark's books like God's Battalions or How the West Won, something like that. I can't remember which one. He talks about these 40 pilgrims from the Crusades. So these were crusaders that have been to the Crusades, they've done the Crusades, they're like kind of had enough of the war, were now walking back to Europe without armor, just dressed in their white pilgrimage, came across Sicily, one of the main towns in Sicily that had been taken over by the Moors, the Muslims, and they were like, what? We've just been fighting these guys for like a couple of decades or whatever back there, and now we're coming back home and they're running your city? No, this won't do. 40 of them. They basically went to the citizens and said, okay, give us some armor and weapons. So they certainly gave them armor and weapons. These 40 guys took over, they killed off, they destroyed the running Muslim enclave that was running the whole city. They wiped them out. And the villagers are like, oh my God, you've liberated us. Thank you so much. Here's gold and money. And they were like, no, 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 no. We don't want anything. They gave back the weapons and armor and carried on doing their pilgrimage without taking a penny. Now, you tell me, in the modern world, who do you know that would behave that way? Who? I know people that would behave that way. And guess what? They're all sedevacantists. I know people that have done huge sacrifices to help me try and do what I'm trying to do. Personal sacrifice without asking for anything in return. And I told them at the start, I can't give you anything and you don't owe me anything. And they helped me nevertheless. I have not come across that level of loyalty, dedication, and personal sacrifice anywhere. And keep in mind, I've worked as an armed bodyguard. I was in martial arts for decades. I've got good friends that I can literally call up and say, hey, I need to help move a body, and they'll be here. But the level of constant, present, support that I found in the sedevacantists is unmatched. And most of those guys are not like warrior types, but I guarantee you, the ones that are, the few that are kind of warrior types, would be standing next to me when the horde comes. You can't find that today, other than in sedevacantists. I've not found it in over half a century of being alive on Earth. I've found that from like my very few of my blood relatives, which would be like my dad and my brother. And even then, if they don't agree with the reason why the fight is happening in the first place, they might not be there. The only other people I found the way are sedevacantist Catholics that I'm not related to, by the way. So, Sedevacantist says, good to catch you live, brother. Good evening. Thank you, sir. DTTW says, I have found that many people who look into things like the pyramids and see all the lies do not become Christians. Can you speak on this? Too big a dose of truth at once and they throw out everything. Yeah. Look, I rejected the Catholic Church from age 7 vehemently, and I continued to do so until age 42 when I had a road to Damascus moment. Why? Because what pretends to be the Catholic Church today is an inversion, is a clearly satanic sect of Vatican II, absolutely not Catholic principles, ideologies, and people. They're like filled with pedophiles. There's not a single person pretending to be Catholic clergy in the Vatican today that is actually Catholic. Not one. Not even by mistake, okay? They're all absolutely converted. They're all absolutely satanic. They're all absolutely knowingly doing the work of the evil one. So why wouldn't you reject Catholicism? And why wouldn't you reject Christianity? So the Catholicism that people see is fake and filled with pedophiles. The so-called Christianity of the Protestants is absolute nonsense. There's 40,000 denominations of like guys saying, throw your wallets in the air. Whatever stays up, you can keep. The rest belongs to the Lord. Give me a Learjet, And the prostitutes are, oh, forgive me. Yes, I used some rain poisons prostitutes like just last Tuesday, but God's forgiven me and so have you. Give me money. That's Protestantism in a nutshell. The Joel Osteen types. Now, is every single Protestant a completely retarded idiot? Not always. But if you really believe in Protestantism, there's an element of retardation and illogic and not able to do basic maths or read. There's definitely an element of that. It's not your fault. I'm not saying that, you're intentionally choosing that path. You were born into it. And it's a hard thing for a human being to dig themselves out of what they were born into. It's not easy. It's absolutely very difficult. So I get it, but it is what it is. So yeah, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I get it. I declared myself atheist from age 7 until about 16. But then I can do maths, I can do biology, I've got odd hobbies, I've got a high IQ, so I was reading up the stuff. In class I was bored because the shit they were teaching me I fucking understood already. So I used to read books of astronomy, physics, and chemistry and biology for fun by myself, because it was like that's what was in the library at the school, and that's what my free period, that's what I did. I remember in class, like, they had like these reading things, and people reading was like, oh my God, it's the most annoying thing to be in a class where you're supposed to all follow along and read. And the guy that's reading is like, and then Bob pulled his gun out and aimed it at Gary. Gary was afraid. I was like, fuck, I can't do this. So I just zoned them out, and I just carried reading the book. I remember once the teacher said, "Oh, Giuseppe, can you pick up? Can you read next?" And I was like, I just looked up and I was like, "I'm sorry, I have no idea where we are. I kind of went ahead a bit." And she goes, "I know, I've been watching you. You're about over 100 pages ahead. We're on page whatever 25, and if you take it from there." And I was like, "Okay, thanks." And she was a cool teacher because she figured it out. This guy's like way ahead of everybody else. Let's not bug him. And she didn't. But the point is, like, the reason I became agnostic was because of all this ability that I had to do basic maths and logic, and I figured out the random chance thing doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. Mathematically, it's impossible. And I've done blog posts on that too, by the way, and videos. I think there's a video that says the atheist kill shot or something. Look it up. It's got the maths there a little bit. So yeah, but the point is that what you're talking about is the same people that are like, "Oh, we didn't go to the moon the way they said, so the Earth is flat." No, you fucking retard. It's like they have absolutely no ability to discern reality. The average millennial, the concept of objective reality for the average millennial is they don't even know what I'm talking about. When I say objective reality, they're like, "Well, what is that? Is there like objects that are real?" Objective reality means that there is a reality that doesn't give a flying fuck what you believe in or what I believe in, but it is absolutely the same for you, me, and everyone else, always. The whole concept of we all have our own truth, that's a millennial brainwashed, maybe Zoomer people. There is no such thing. There is only one truth, and it's the same for you, me, and everybody else. Whether you like it or not, whether you can see it or not, whether you can understand it or not, is irrelevant. And I always say coffee tables and walls, they're the absolute proof. Whenever I meet a stupid journalist or some social justice warrior that says, "Oh, we all have our own truth," I'm like, bring your head over here. I'm going to smack your head into this wall until you realize that the walls are an absolute. Coffee tables too. I'm going to bash your head into that coffee table until you tell me coffee tables are an absolute. And then guess what? If the wall's an absolute and the coffee table's an absolute, so's maths, and so's logic, and so's a bunch of other things. Whether you are stupid enough to understand them or not, that's a different topic. But they're there. So, yes, the average person is a moron. I mentioned Tesla, one of the giants of human history. The other giant of human sociology is Professor Cipolla. You don't know who he is, but Professor Cipolla wrote the 5 laws of human stupidity. Look it up. And rule number 1 is there's always more stupid people than you can possibly imagine surrounding. Yeah, and he's right. Wade Wilson says, "By the way, I haven't found a complete written account of it, but they call it Virginia UFO incident." Okay, thank you. It does look like they found real living things as opposed to demons confusing people. Yeah, good. I'll thanks. I'll try and look it up. Americans build killdozers. Yeah, killdozer. That dude. I feel so sorry for him. He was such a cool dude. And yes, I'm back. There's the link to the ebooks. Living in Japan, can confirm. there you go. Sedevacantis says, "I also know cities that would do the same, not one." Yeah, there you go. See, there's another Sedevacantis that confirms what I'm telling you guys. Okay says, "Yeah, the whole my truth is retarded." It is absolutely retarded, but you have to understand it's intentional. Do you know that like 60 years ago, 70 years ago, most schools in Europe, you had to like learn Latin and Greek if you're at a decent school. You had to learn Latin and Greek to read Latin and Greek. You could read the Bible in the original Greek, the New Testament. You could read Latin. You could read the Gaelic Wars by Julius Caesar. You could read his work in the original language in which he wrote it. Why are we not doing that? Oh, it's too difficult. Most people now, especially most English-speaking people, can barely speak English. They can barely read and write it. There's whole generations of people that cannot read a paragraph in their own language, the only one they speak, and rewrite it in their own words without completely missing the main points of it. I'm talking about a paragraph, not the summary of a book. I'm talking a paragraph. Okay? Read a paragraph out of a newspaper and rewrite it in your own words. If I was hiring people, that would be my test number one, regardless of what I'm hiring them for. Whether I'm hiring them to be brain surgeons or fucking, guys who dig a hole. Now, a guy who digs a hole, who can't read and write, well, that's okay. As long as he can dig a hole, that's all I need, right? But a guy that needs to understand some basic concepts of logic, first test I'd give him. If I was an interviewer about anything, any job, I'd be like, oh, here's a page of random information I just took from today's newspaper. There you go. Please read half of that page. Here's a piece of paper. Here's a pen. Rewrite it in your own words without referring to it. Okay? You got 10 minutes. Read it. Read that paragraph and rewrite in your own words. Thank you. That'll be my test number one. And I'll tell you what, over 50% of people, after they've done that, I'd be able to go, thank you. Don't call us. We won't call you. Bye. I'm absolutely certain of it. So, Vacantis says, we had a glorious wedding and mass today. To California cities. Excellent. Brilliant. Vacantis, by the way, there are now 3 couples that I personally know that got involved with me because of the books I wrote and the YouTube videos I do, the Kurgan TV stuff I do. They're now married. They're all in their 20s. They're now married to beautiful, beautiful women. I have physically met like 2 of the couples. The third couple, I know them online, sort of thing. Absolutely brilliant. Lovely women. Extremely cool guys, like really, intense, cool dudes that are in the 20s, like working hard, doing stuff. They're all having babies. Okay, they're in the next 6 months. There's going to be 3 new babies in the Sedevacantis community, and they don't use contraception, so there's going to be a lot more coming from where those babies come from. You go to a Sedevacantis mass and you see young people and a lot of little children. And if you're lucky enough to have one of the Sedevacantis masses where they've got a bit of space, like the chapel in Belgium where like my priest goes, the kids play outside. They play with the priest. Like my priest is like, the little kids had like water guns shooting each other. They shot the priest with it, and he's like, oh, gets a water gun, and the priest is shooting the kids, with a water gun. That's the kind of hardcore, brilliant priests that are in Sedevacantis churches, Sedevacantis says, note to self, start Kurgan's mating services. Fantastic. Lots of baby warriors. Exactly. And DTV says, and newspapers in the US have to use 5th grade level English so their customers base isn't too small. Yeah, I absolutely believe you. Mind you, I haven't picked up or read a newspaper since 2008. That was the last time I actually picked up a newspaper. I decided to do an experiment where I used to kind of read the Metro newspaper, which is one of the least bad ones in England. Because when I got on the tube, I'd read that. And I was like, well, why am I reading this shit? I can read a book. I can buy a book that I actually enjoy and read that. And I thought, no, I'm not going to fucking touch a newspaper for a month and see what that does. And it's like, the level of, suddenly there isn't a sewer running through your head first thing in the morning. I was like, well, that feels good. Never went back and never going to. I occasionally see a newspaper headline and I laugh at them because it's like, it's now, the veil has gone from your eyes and you can see the intent behind even just the headline of what they're trying to like, be afraid, worry, panic. And I just, completely irrelevant shit means nothing to my life. Sedevacantist goes, "No fair. Your priest uses holy water in his squirt gun." There you go. You know, it's probably I don't know. I think he just took it from one of the kids, but it's funny, man. That priest has been to my house, and you know, he there's families that like they go on pilgrimages, and there's families that are like, "Hey, can you take our kids? You know, we're working, whatever." So he basically is like taking this group of people to the Loreto, and he stopped by our house. On the way there, there was a little girl with them and a brother. Brother's like 14 or something. Awesome kids. Like the 6-year-old girl was far more advanced in knowing all the prayers and all the ways to behave at mass than I am. I'm not a good Catholic in that sense, you know. Again, I'm kind of like the Crusader guys. I was, you know, the best analogy I can make about myself is like, think of me as having been a mercenary in like, you know, if we're going to make an analogy about the Middle Age, I was a mercenary soldier for like fighting for whoever, for money, you know, for decades. And then it was like, bang, fell off my horse, had the road to Damascus moment. It's like, oh, Jesus is real. Okay. I'm now going to become a crusader. Okay. Cross painted on. Good. I'm with you guys. And they're like, oh, by the way, this is the mass. I'm like, okay, I'll just keep quiet and do the mass and say my prayers and apologize for the shit that I've done that's wrong and confess and take my host and keep quiet. And it's like, right. Now, by the way, there's a city there that's like filled with like heretics that are trying to kill Christians. I'm like, okay, this is how we do it. I know exactly where to go. And we can build this tunnel. And there's a passage that way. And they're like, and the other Catholics are like, oh, this boy is really, he's a good Catholic, isn't he? And I'm like, no, I'm not really that good a Catholic, but I am a Catholic, absolutely convinced. And yes, I will fight to the death. And I'm actually really good at this shit. You know, don't ask me exactly what every movement in the Mass means, or, you know, I don't know all the prayers in Latin. I know, like, the ones I need to know. But we're not talking about how to be effective against the enemy. Oh, dude, that's my bread and butter. So that's where I'm at, you know, and you need all sorts. This little girl, she's going to make somebody a fantastic wife one day. You know, give her 20 years. She's going to be an awesome, awesome Catholic wife. Intelligent, switched on, clever, funny, kind of naughty, but like the Catholicism kept her on track. And you should see the priest. We're playing Uno, you know, us and the kids and all playing Uno. And the priest is like, the priest is cheating, right? In the game of Uno. He's like, yeah, he just puts down a number and just like, hey, wait a minute. That's a 6. That's not a 9. And he goes, he gets caught out. And he's like, and the kid next to him is like, oh, but you kind of cheating. And it's like, well, if you do it quick, people don't make it, you know, don't pay attention. But he's also, you know, it's very humorous. It's fun. It's a pointless game. It's not like we're gambling for poker money or anything, you know. But he's teaching them the, you know, be as wise as serpents aspect of it, which is like, be Catholic, be a good boy, do the right thing, pay attention, because somebody's going to try and cheat you if you don't, you know. And he does it in a way that the kid doesn't even realize he's playing a game, but he's learning. And that's the best way to learn, by the way. So the Vacantis says, days always go better when I start the day with a few chapters in my Catholic faith, a catechism in pictures. Louis Laravois Morrow. Thank you. I'm not familiar with that work. I'm going to look at it. Great. Thank you very much. So yeah, in short, those of you that are interested, please go and look at the Crusades. It's an absolutely fundamental book in terms of giving you just a narrow window. I'm not even talking about the history of humanity, what happened on Mars, the real history of the Second World War. Not even talking about that. If you read the Crusades, and then also read The Great Siege, 1565, by Ernest Branford. Read those two books. And if you want a bit of a primer before that, read God's Battalions by Rodney Stark, which is a small book. But God's Battalions gives you the context for the Crusades. The Crusades is, in 1930s, people expected you to kind of know a little bit who this prince was and when the crusade happened and what the main battles were. They expected you to know that because people did know that. Now, no one has a fucking clue. So God's Battalions gives you a little bit of an overall picture, which is useful if you read it in conjunction or just before the Crusades. But please read that book. If you are of any kind of European descent, please read that book, because if you only read one book in your life, let it be that one. Like, honestly, I can't explain to you the ripple effect that it has in someone's life, but it's absolutely astonishing. And the consequences of that ripple in ways that you don't expect. They ripple in ways like your relationships. Okay, right now, hookup culture is what's the thing. There was I can't remember if I put it on the blog or somewhere. There's a little video clip of this girl saying, "Oh, how many guys you been with?" And they're young girls. They're like in their 20s, very pretty, both of them. And she goes, "Oh, probably like 20 guys." Like, "Oh, I need to check my list." I'm like, "What do you mean your list?" "Oh, you mean you don't have a list of all the guys you banged?" "Oh, of course, everybody has a list. Yeah." And she starts, she shows the phone and she starts to scroll through the phone. And there's a couple of hundred names on there. There's well over 100 people in that list, and she's just scrolling it like that. It's not 20, it's probably like 200. Like the joke that's like whatever number a woman says is her body count, you got to add a zero behind it. And she's in her 20s. And it's like, there's a whole other issue, which, I am busy trying to put together a book about, relationships, sexual relationships and marriage and that sort of thing. So it's pretty complicated because I'm trying to do, it's a nonfiction book, so it's probably going to be like Believe. It's just kind of like my take on things. So it's not going to be huge, but it's going to be like packed with like things that I think are useful. Um, and you should. I'll put it in there. But anyway, the point is, there's people here probably watching this that are going, "Oh, so what if she's been with 200 guys?" Or there might be some guys that think, "Oh, that means she's got more experience. I don't have to teach her anything." I used to be one of those guys. I used to think that, it's like one of my old blogs, you can probably read, like, I think I wrote a post like The Ideal Woman. There was a short version and a long version. And I think on the short version, I said, well, I think maybe my ideal woman is like porn star, because, yeah, I can kind of see how badly she's faking it. I can tell, she's experienced enough that it doesn't, there we go, stink bug gone. That like sexually, I'll be like cool because she can do anything or whatever. So I understand the people that are maybe thinking that way now, but the reality of a woman that's been with, like, 100, 200 guys or whatever, is that they are damaging their natural instinct about things. And if you're a guy that's been with a lot of women, you don't realize that either, because I have been with a lot of women, and I can tell you right now, if you tell me like, "Oh, but all those things you did, don't you feel bad?" Adam Piggott writes about that, and he clearly sees something I don't. Because when I think back on all the women that I've been with, I'm like, I don't particularly feel guilty about it. I don't particularly feel it was terrible. There were, for the most part, very positive interactions for the women as well, not just me. Not always, a couple of them, whatever, ended up not too good. But I don't have any crushing sense of shame or whatever. But the reason is because I'm so fucked up damaged, right? That I don't realize the bad thing. And the way to realize it, so if you're a guy or a girl that's listening to this, that's thinking, "Oh, well, so what?" Imagine this. Imagine you have a child. Imagine you have a daughter or a son. You love those people. If you have children, you'll know what I'm talking about. But you love those. If you're a normal human being, even if you're like slightly autistic like I am, you love those human beings more than your own life, more than anything on the planet. Okay? Now imagine your daughter or boy, your son, grows up, becomes, a teenager. Now imagine your 16, 17, 20-year-old daughter, whatever, or son, starts getting banged around, at age, say she starts at age 16 or 17, she starts to have sex, and she has a new boyfriend every like 3 or 4 months that all like bang her from 6 ways to Sunday. It's not about the her having sex or whatever, that they're gonna have sex at some point, or my son, it's not about that. It's about, what do you think it's doing to them? What do you think it's doing to the natural innocence that they have, of the natural beauty that is the innocence of a child, right? Mine is gone. Mine is lost long ago. I've been through so much shit that it's like, somebody made me aware of that. I said, oh, this guy's, people think she's brutal or to try to be cool, and it's not that. He's just had his veil ripped off. That's the words he used from a young age. And, you can't put it back on. And it's true, but I don't want that for my kids. There's another analogy. A guy said, oh, well, you did karate. And I was like, yeah, but karate was good for me. It's like, dude, how many injuries have you suffered because of karate? You can't breathe properly because of karate. You like permanent injuries all over your body because you did that so hard for so long. And I'm like, yeah, but it's okay. I survived it and I'm better for it. And he said to me, let me put it to you this way. And I didn't have a son at the time. So if you have a son, would you want him to do karate the way you did? And I was like, oh, fuck, no. Shit, no. I wouldn't want that for him. I'd want him to do Sistema, absolutely from the start. Not karate, no. This is the same, right? You don't realize the damage that like having 200 sexual partners for a woman does to her, but you will begin to think about it and realize it if you consider. You can't consider yourself because you don't care. Fine, consider somebody you really care about. It's important. It does damage you. And think of the alternative. Think of like, if I have to go back to thinking about when was the first time I had a crush on a girl that I really sort of thought, oh man, she's like cool, I wish. I was a little boy. I was probably like 7 or 8 that I can remember consciously a girl that I used to like in the class. And, I was 7 or 8. It wasn't like we kissed or anything like that. It was just a girl I really liked. But even that was already a little bit probably corrupt by life around me, the secular lifestyle, the parents I had, whatever. The first time I actually remember a sensation of being with a girl that I really liked her company. I really liked being close to her. I was like 3 years old. We used to play in the dirt with like trucks and little cars and stuff and looking at ants. There was no intention of sexual anything. But it was pure, it was clear, it was clean. Imagine like having that and growing up with that and then ending up with that girl and you both have that sensation. How much better of a life is that? How much easier of a marriage are you going to have? What I would add is that would be the ideal, but you need absolute fucking layered anti-gravity shielding armor to protect you from the filth and absolute shit and lies that the world tries to inject in you from when you're born. Because even if you believe in all that, even if you see all this, for you to find another human being, another person of the opposite sex that feels the same way, knows the same things, understands the beauty of the reality of it, and then actually fights off the rest of the world to live that is very rare. So when people say, oh, where do I find a good woman? You build her. You have to make her. You find one that's close enough, and then you build her by example. You do your road, and if she starts to follow and she starts to fall in line, great. And if she doesn't, well, then she's not the one. But, I'll go into more detail on that in the book that I'm busy trying to put together. DTDW says, God's Battalion is great, except him saying the cry for the... What? God's Battalion is great, except him saying the cry for the Crusades unfortunately led to a rise in anti-Semitism for no reasons at all. Okay. The man's not a Catholic. You got to remember, he's a Protestant Baptist. He's an honest man and he's an honest historian, but, he's got his skewed opinions about things. Good old Rodney Stark. I have a lot of respect for his work, but like this other guy, Julius Norwich, who passed away not too long ago. This guy. John Julius Norwich wrote The Popes. Very good book, but Norwich was a Protestant, and by page 9, he makes an absolute idiot of himself by invalidating his own concept of Christianity, which fucks it up by page 9. And throughout this, he goes on about the poor Muslims and the evil crusaders and like the bigoted crusaders. And, you know, it's really quite funny. Read the Crusades. Please read the Crusades. You know, for $8, I think you can get the ebook from my store, or if you want to wait a week or so, get the hard copy for like about $35. Any news on the 1911? Yeah, I'm stuck at about, oh man, another one. I'm stuck at about 250 now that Cordel's put about 250 euro. So I need about 1,000 to get one. So unless you guys give me a huge bunch of sponsorship, it's not an expense I can really justify currently. And even if you guys do give me money for that, I'm probably being somewhat unreasonable, but hey, I want one. So yeah, so anyway, this stream was prompted by the issuing of the Crusades, like I said, at the e-store, but Memento Mori bug, yeah. No, the one I killed, I definitely killed, but that's another one. They come in, I don't know where they get in from. What is that him up there? Yeah, that's him. Sorry guys, but I have to murder another Chinese stink bug. There we go. Not only killed him, but also made him fall into the web of the spiders that eat them. You know, I gotta salute those spiders, because I sure as shit wouldn't eat a stink bug. I did by mistake once, because I'd left the Nutella jar open and I just grabbed a spoonful, put it in my mouth, and crunch. I was like, oh, that's crunchy. Oh, fella, thank you here. Thank you, sir. Another $20 from fella. Thank you, sir. That's much appreciated, and that'll go definitely to the 1911 fund. Yeah, thank you. Ooh. All right, I think, you know, if you guys have any more questions about history and why it matters now, why, yes, specifically the book about the Crusades, but you know, generally, and read, like I've put a link at the bottom of this thing to Ron Unz's book about everything you think you know about the Second World War is wrong. If you read one blog post about the Second World War in your entire life, read that one, please. Because, you know, we've all been lied to so extensively. It's like we don't realize how difficult it is for us to like actually see the truth. And, you know, one of the analogies that I use is when I was a kid in Italy, we've got these like caterpillars with like hair, you know, like long hair. So it's like caterpillars maybe that long, and it's got like hair that are like that long all over it. So like fluffy caterpillar. And since I'm a kid, my grandmother used to tell me, don't touch them, they'll like burn your skin, and you know, so we never did. And then once in my 30s, I was at my dad's house in Africa, and you know, the similar sort of things over there, and we'd been told that since we were kids there as well. Don't touch them because they'll burn your skin and they'll irritate you and whatever. And I saw one crawling across his corridor in his house, and I thought, you know, fuck this, I want to find out how bad this burn is. So I picked it up and I put it on my arm, and I let it crawl all over my arm for like 5 minutes. It's like nothing's happening. And I realized this is bullshit. So I went to my dad and I'm like, Dad, what the fuck did you lie to me about for? Look, he's been crawling up and down my arm for 5 minutes. Like, I was an adult now, right? I was in my 30s. My dad's in his like late 50s. I'm like, what the fuck? Why do you lie to me, Dad? And he's like, oh, I didn't know. That's what they told me when I was a kid, and I never touched one. You know, so you can see the lie just perpetuates itself with people not having any bad intentions. They actually think they're helping you. They think they're telling you the truth. You know, they're telling you what they've been told is the truth. So that's yeah, sad, but that's how the lies get perpetrated. And what you think you know about the Second World War is wrong. What you think you know about the Crusades is wrong. What you think you know about the Catholic Church is massively wrong right now. What you think is the Catholic Church, everything that you think you know about the Catholic Church, unless you're already a sedevacantist, is an absolute inversion, is a complete lie, an utter lie. And you can verify this by going back to reading the works of people who were Catholic, who were Christians, back in the year 120, back in the year 80, back in the year, before the year 200, there's volumes of letters and works by people that were Catholic Christians, that were Christians, Catholics. Before the year 200, there's volumes of documents by the people of that time. And there's documents throughout the thousands of years, but you have to go back and read them. You have to actually look for them. You have to actually take the time to read. You have to have the attention span that, you know, is a little bit more than a fruit fly on cocaine that goes like, it's an emoji, text. Oh, a call, no, call is too, I don't want to call a girl, it's too intimidating. No, it's difficult. Oh, what, you want me to read a book from like 2,000 years ago? No, a letter, no, I gotta like read like my manual on how to like change a tire, and it's too difficult. I need a YouTube video. I need a YouTube video to show me how to change a car tire. And you want me to read a book about the patristic fathers, and how could that possibly be relevant to me? I agree. If you're that guy, it's not relevant to you. If you're that guy, personally, I sincerely hope you become fertilizer. That's just me, you know. Gaijin TV, teaching my daughters how to spot liars. Hilda Kurgan. Well, when it comes to spotting liars, you know, if they're alive on planet Earth, they lie. Everybody lies. Everybody has lied. Everybody tends to lie at some point. You know, I've lied in my life, of course, like everyone has. I try and limit my level of deception, especially, you know, now, since for years, really. I've never enjoyed it. I've never liked it. I've never appreciated lying. Sometimes it was necessary for certain situations, but in my personal life, currently, I don't remember the last time I lied about something. Oh, maybe I do. Yeah. And again, it was, you know, the kind of lie that's to avoid like hurting somebody's feelings. Yeah. But for myself, you know, having this conversation quite often with my wife about, you know, various narratives that like people try and push on us, or just try and push on you in general. And I'm like, yeah, no, fuck that. I'm just going to tell them no. And she's like, oh, but you know, if you do it that way. And I'm like, I am doing it that way. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to fuck around. I'm not going to like pretend, oh, well, you know, politically correct. No, fuck you. What you're saying is a lie. It's wrong. It's bullshit. It's degenerate shit. I don't want it in my life, and I don't want it anywhere near my kids. Fuck you, and I don't care who you are. Why? Because when one guy does that, another 20 guys pop up that are like, he said what I've been wanting to say for years, but I'm too scared. And then, there you go. Christopher Collins says, thank you and good night. Thank you, sir, and good night. And you know, when I've seen this everywhere, and you know what? If the guy does get offended, or if the people around you do get upset, and they're like, oh, you're a whatever, you know, some ism, you're some ism. And I don't give a shit. I'm like, you can call me what the fuck you like, but 2 + 2 is 4. And you can call me a mathicianism, who, you know, he's oppressive with his maths and his logic. Yeah. And I don't care. You get upset about it, I don't care. If you're upset about it, stay away from me. Run. Run. And that works fine for me, because then all the morons tend to stay away. They don't bother me anymore. And all the people who are not morons are like, hey, you're a cool guy. You just told that guy to go fuck himself to his face because he was trying to tell you that, like, you know, whatever crappy nonsense, you know what I'm talking about, the like shit that's going around everywhere in the Western world now, that absolutely, I mean, You know, those of you that have watched the Putin interview, I mean, nothing new. There's absolutely nothing that Putin said that I didn't already know, that wasn't already known for years by everybody. But the reactions of the of the talking heads in the West, Boris Johnson, it's all a lie, it's all a lie, and we should ban it, and we should go to war immediately. With Putin is a liar. This is the fucking guy who was telling you to stay locked indoors while he had parties during, the COVID thing. These are absolute, Joe Biden falling asleep is like, oh, the president of Mexico, Joe Blogs, was it China? That's a president of the United States. I mean, don't believe Putin, he's evil. Really? Putin didn't say a single fucking thing that has not been known by anyone who's got a working brain cell for the last decade, minimum. Not one. So, but look at the reaction of the West. We've got to block all this. It's like, it's sad, It's like, how can you have a conversation like, on Gab or whatever? Like, people are going on about Republicans and Democrats. You're still talking about that shit. And somebody on Social Galactic sent the link. Look here, there's a guy that's saying that, fucking Francis is not really the Pope. And yeah, there was definitely a thing to push out, Ratzinger. And what do you have to say about it, Kurgan? I'm like, are you fucking retarded? Have you not been listening to me at all for the last 4 years? That you think that I care about what one Satanist does to another Satanist, or what the Satanists want you to believe is the current narrative about the Satanism going on in the satanic, enclave and coven that is inside the Vatican, which is filled with Satanists. I don't care. What have I got to say about it? Drop a nuke on it. I don't give a shit. It's like, who cares? Those people are not Catholics. They're not saying anything relevant to anybody that's Catholic. They're just carrying on doing their nonsense, trying to oh look, Bergoglio, yeah, you're right, Bergoglio's not the real Pope, Ratzinger was the real Pope, oh. No, they're both Satanists. Neither of them was Catholic at all. Neither was Wojtyla, neither was Montini or Roncalli. None of them. None of them since 1958. They're all fakes. But hey, don't believe me. Carry on believing what you believe and go to the Baptist church. That's the real world of Christ. That's the one. Yeah, the Baptist one on the corner of buttfuck Alabama and, screw me Montana or whatever. Those are going to be the real churches. Yeah. No. And if you are going to throw out the whole of Christianity, the whole of Catholicism with the bathwater because you think the earth is flat, then you're stupid. You're a moron. Look at history. Look at what Catholicism did. Look at the fruits of Catholicism. Then look at the fruits of Protestantism. Look at the fruits of Eastern Orthodoxy. Look at the fruits. Not just today, but throughout the 2,000 years of Christian history. Yeah. What has Eastern Orthodoxy achieved? Where did they spread the gospel to? Where's their unity? Where is their apostolic succession? What about Protestantism? Well, when you figure out that Protestantism is responsible for a minimum of currently over 40,000 denominations, which is being generous, because in Protestantism, the founding principle of Protestantism is that each man interprets the Bible as he sees fit. Is that one church undivided? Because if you read your Bible, or, if you're too lazy to read the Bible because it's too big, read my short book, Believe. It's a tiny book, 98 pages, big type. Takes you an hour and a half, 2 hours to read if you're a slow reader. And in there, it gives you all the links in the New Testament where it tells you that Jesus, along with the people that wrote the Bible, apostles, explain very clearly it's one faith, it's one Bible, it's one belief system, not 50. There's no other ways to interpret it. You don't get to interpret it the way you want. No. But 40,000 denominations with Sola Scriptura. So the guy who changed the Bible, physically changed it, ripped out some books that didn't agree with him, is now telling you that all you need is just the book, the one he changed, yeah? Which, by the way, he used a version of that book that was edited and changed for 700 years by Pharisees. Who are the Pharisees? The guys who think that Jesus is boiling in a lake of shit in hell. Just to give you an idea, that's the Bible that the Protestants use. And what's the best Bible the Protestants use? The one that was created by a gay king, flamboyantly so, who also created the Freemason temples, which are satanic. That's the King James Bible version. Yeah, okay. Those are the fruits of Protestantism. Not to mention the fact that they introduced, guess what? Contraception. That's right. In 1920, 1930, between 1920 and 1930, the Protestant churches introduced contraception, which was absolutely forbidden in Catholicism. And what happens after that? Well, what happens after that? You have sex for fun. So it's no sex before marriage, but we're going to test it out because, hey, we might not be compatible. So you then have sex before marriage. Then you have cohabitation before marriage. Then you have, well, we don't really get along. I banged you enough, but yeah, I don't really like you. So now you have the spread of sex for fun. And guess what happens when you have sex for fun and you occasionally get somebody pregnant? Well, we don't want to stay alive together. No, so we get abortion. And then we do have a kid and maybe we try and get married, but hey, we're not happy. Well, then we have divorce. Those are the fruits of Protestantism. And you can try and deny it as much as you want, but go and look. That's exactly where they are. Now, the fake Catholic Church is giving annulments to marriages like they give up candy, but even now, it's still difficult for them to do that. Even now, they can't say that abortion is okay. So, keep that in mind. Hello, Woolly Ram, says good almost morning. Sedevacantist says 44,000 flavors of Catholicness rebellion. Yeah. Yeah. Gauging TV, liars abound. So glad I listened to voices like Vox and the Colonel. And look, the other thing is, you gotta live your own experience. Yeah. Look, I'm very grateful for those of you that listen to me, buy my stuff, buy my books, spread the word. Great, thank you. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you do more of it. And actually, under each one of my blog posts now, if you go on the blog post itself, at the bottom there's a share button. Please use that button. It's like one or two clicks. You click on it and then you select whether Telegram, Facebook, whatever. Click and you send the link to your mates, to your friends, okay? Please do that. It does help. I do want to be able to dedicate more time to like really important stuff because I think soon there's going to be a time when those things are going to be either banned or difficult to find or not even know about. So I do want to put out a few books on certain topics that I think are very, very important. So I would appreciate your help in doing that. But the point is, you got to also live your own experience. Sure, take on board everything I'm saying, test it and check it for yourself. That's the main thing. You've got to test and check things for yourself. You've got to do things for yourself to see it. And, support the things that help you. If you find my stuff useful, if you find my work useful, write me a good review. Write me a positive review. It doesn't cost you money. Share the blog post. It doesn't cost you money. It takes a couple of seconds. And it's helpful, not just to you and to me, but to other people as well, so why not spread it? Anyway, I'm still not completely unconscious yet, so I'm gonna go make myself another coffee, which will take me about 2 or 3 minutes. There are 19 of you. There was like over 30 of you at some point. So the hardcore core that's still here, ping me questions about anything. Even stupid questions I'll allow. I won't ban you for one stupid question, but don't be blasphemous. I won't ban you even if you ask a really retarded question. So you're okay. This is your one chance to do it. I'm going to go make a coffee. Cordell Mitchell says, I'm going to try to fast from the internet and my phone for the rest of the month. I think I'm going to find myself reading a large amount. Please do. And just before you start your fast, if I may suggest, if you haven't already read it, get that book, The Crusades, and read that. And if you have already read it, hey, pick one of the other books that I've got on my e-store or Amazon, or pick another book. When did you go bald? What do you mean? I've been bald for years. When did I start shaving my head? Let's think. I had a widow's peak, sort of like, kind of pretty like self-evidence in my, I'd say my early 20s. I already had like a widow's peak here. Like, I just had like the hair sort of started about there, and then it just sort of went like this. Um, but not that far back. And then I started, the spot at the back started to go. I don't honestly remember. Let me think. It was 30. I think in my 30s, like early or mid 30s. Let's see. When did I get here? That's 20 years ago. I moved to the UK. Yeah, about 20 years ago, I would say it started to like get to the point where I just started to like just shave it off. Yeah, I'd say early 30s, something like that. And I just thought like, fuck it, like, oh, people worry about that shit. Oh no, I need to like grow my hair and massage my scalp. I was like, yeah, I don't like the priest look, so fuck it. I just cut it all off, and that was it. And it's really simple. It's like easy to look after. You don't know, I've got a little bit of hair now, like here. Oh, my little boy, he's awesome. Actually, I'm gonna go pick. I'm gonna make a coffee, and I'm gonna get that drawing that the boy did. That's on the fridge, I think, just to show you because it's hilarious. So here it is. So that the big one is that's me, and on this one, there's another picture I did which is better. So I'm not the best example in this one, but this one here is his mom, because my wife often has like a little bun on the top of her head. If you've seen a film, I think it's called The Bank Job with Jason Statham and some woman. The woman in the film looks a lot like my wife, and it's like that English sort of type. They do their hair up, and it's like a little bun on top of their head. And whenever he draws her, he invariably draws her with a little hat on top of her head. Then this is his sister, who's got like really curly hair, so he gets that right. This is the other sister that's got like, long sort of flowy wild hair. This is the baby, his little sister, who's like, she doesn't have a lot of, I mean, she's got hair now, but basically she's kind of bald. And, this is me, but he kind of put all my hair in one spot. There's another picture he did of like the bald head, which is like tiny little lines, and it's like your hair, Dad. it's brilliant, really. Let me just put the coffee on. I'll be back. and ask a bunch of questions. Go for it. Okay, I'm back with my coffee. All right. All right. Favorite Italian dish, s'il vous plaît. Favorite Italian dish. I think possibly the way they do sole, the fish, um, in Venice. The Venetian sole is probably one of my favorite ones. There is also, depends on the mood. I've got a few like dishes that I quite like. That's one. A proper roast, a proper lasagna. Lasagna is about the only pasta that I actually really like. That's about it. Woolly Ram, one more condemnation against pratis. Much of the current vegetarian vegan push is sponsored by Seventh-day Adventists. Yeah, well, all sorts of lies. Again, if you read the Bible, if you actually read the Bible, it talks about vegetarianism. There we go. Problem is, once I whack them, they seem to have this like way to just disappear. They survive the whack sometimes. Anyway, yeah, if you read the Bible, it basically tells you that vegetarians are like morons. So yeah, anyway. Who would win in a fight? 3 Vox Day clones or 1 Kurgan? Ooh. That's a very good question. I don't know. If it was one-on-one, I'd win. Look, when I say that, it's all hypothetical nonsense, right? But and you never know, right? You might slip and the guy gets in a lucky shot and you're out. So, but statistically, I think if we had to go like one-on-one to the death between me and Vox, I'm fairly sure I'd win. Against 3 of them, the problem is that regardless of his skill, which I don't know because we never sparred, he clearly has some. I'm certain my skill in that respect is well above his, but the thing is that Vox has the attitude that if he decides that, like, yeah, no, he's gonna go for this, he wouldn't give up. You have to knock him out or kill him to stop him, and that makes for a tough fight, regardless of who the guy is. If he's got that mental attitude, and if there's three of them, whoa, yeah, I wouldn't fancy my chances against three of them necessarily. I mean, if I think about it coldly, if I knew that that was going to happen, that's the fight. And if I can if I can have my back to a wall or something like that, where I'm not actually like surrounded in the center like a bunch of gnolls, the reason I use gnolls is like this was the thing my brother and I used to say. What if you were teleported to like, um, um, to Dungeons and Dragons world? And it's like, yeah, that'd be cool. And like my brother would always be like, what if you're teleported in the center of a circle of homosexual gnolls? I was like, well, So no, if I could pick the fight, in other words, if there was three Vox clones in front of me and I had my back to a wall or something like that, I don't know. I'd account for myself pretty well. Whoever won, it wouldn't be fun for the other guy or the other clones. Oh, Itani Mul 100. Oh, I have to kill this bug. They just disturb me. Okay, that was a good solid whack. Aha. And I followed where you went. You scum. There. I better vacuum up the bodies. Oh. There's a pile of books here that I need to put away. So Itani Mul 100 says, what age is too old to be still making little crusaders for the cause? There's got to be a time when you're too old. No. My personal opinion is like, I'd like to have at least probably another 20 years of life to at least give them some sense of direction, hopefully leave something for them. And I'm 54, so my youngest girl is like 1 year old. We talked about this with my wife. If I had a bunch of you guys buying all my books, if I had 1,000 of you buying all my shit whenever I put out something, we'd be making another one or two, probably. And after that, if we had another two kids, then my wife would be. I would need to have a lot more resources because she took some strain in the last pregnancy, and I wouldn't want her to still be running around doing stuff when she's pregnant again. I would want her to be able to just chill and have somebody do the cooking, the cleaning, the other stuff, and looking after the other kids in some way, like playing with them, whatever. I would want people to be able to help with that. If I had that, yeah, I would probably go for another one or two kids. But and then she'd probably be at a point where having another pregnancy would be maybe a bit dangerous or maybe not possible. I mean, I think we've both got really good genes, so I think she's probably able to make kids for maybe even another decade. She's quite a bit younger than I am, but yeah, look, my uncle who was 65, he had a kid when he was 65. That kid is now in his late teens. My uncle's still around. So yeah, I think if you're fit and healthy, probably up to like your 60s. If you're gonna last at least until your 80s. But a man can have kids when he's 90 years old. I don't advise it because then unless you're really, and even if you are really wealthy, there's like having a father there is very, very important. So I think you need to be able to be around. So that would be my answer to that question. Willie Ram says, with how much they lie about everything, how do you tease out real history from propaganda? By doing a lot of research. It's time consuming, and reading my books, because I've done that. In the books that I've written about the face on Mars, about the Catholic Church, and even about Systema within that element, Systema, the Systema book doesn't talk specifically a lot about history, but it talks about the history of Systema. So I have done that research, and I give you the references. I tell you where I got it from, so you can test, you can check what I'm saying. So the best way is to get a guy, say like Rodney Stark, right? Rodney Stark gives you the references, and I've checked some of his references because I want to make sure for myself. And for the most part, for the very vast majority of the cases, his references are spotlessly correct. And you can, the way that you can check history is by data points. One data point's not enough. That's why I like that Ron Unz's blog post about the Second World War, because he doesn't just give you one data point. For each topic that he covers, he gives you a cluster of data points, and each one of those data points are themselves clusters of more data points. So it's like it's a shotgun within a shotgun sort of effect. He's like almost giving you a meta study of the topic, because he says, oh, by the way, there's this guy who's done these references, and this guy completely separate who's done these references, and there's this guy who's done these references, and then there are these objective facts that are, and they all point in the same direction, and it's like, oh fuck, it's undeniable. There's enough evidence here that, and any one of those points can't be denied. They can't be argued with. So first of all is more than one data point. Second is, can you argue the other side? Can you argue the other side? That is a very important thing to check. And where you can't, or where you find that the arguments are absolutely nonsensical lies, well, where there's a little fire, there's a big fire, sort of thing. Luis Vega says, what Bible do you recommend? I recommend that you have a set of Bibles. I don't recommend one Bible. I've got the Septuagint, because there's some stuff in the Septuagint that is more correct than the other versions. I've got a version of the Vulgate in Latin. If you don't read Latin, it's not going to be very useful. I've got a version of the New Testament in Aramaic, which is somewhere in the back there, by a guy called Reverend David. Oh, I need my glasses to see that. Reverend David Bauscher, who's a Protestant, but the Aramaic version of the Bible I think is very interesting, and it's only the New Testament, but read. And then I've got one that I really like. It's I don't know if it's there now. Yeah, the Interlinear Greek English New Testament. So it's got Greek and English, and it's a Nestle something Bible. You should have at least an interlinear one that does word for word, like literally one word for one word, which if you read the words translated as they are in the English version, so they've got the English version, and then they've got, or they've got the Greek version, and then they've got the English under it, word by word. So if you read the English as the Greek actually was, you get a very different sense of how it was, what it's meant, because each language has got its own idioms. And if you do word for word translation, the English grammatically is not good, doesn't make sense sometimes, but you get a very good sense of what the original writers intended when they wrote that sentence. So definitely I would have an interlinear, especially for the New Testament. I would definitely have that. I've got a couple of interlinear ones for the Hebrew Old Testament. I had a really good one, which is almost impossible to find now, because it was a translation of the Hebrew that has all the bits which they try and hide about the Nephilim and all that stuff, and it was really good. And it was one recommended. It was done by a Hebrew rabbi. And I remember that when I showed this to an Orthodox Jew that saw what was in it, he was like, oh, this shouldn't be for you guys, you shouldn't read this. It's like, oh. But I can't find that again. I've sent that to my dad. He's got it somewhere over there. If I ever get a bunch of money, I'm going to ask him to ship my stuff back now that I've got a big house here. Anyway, so I would have an interlinear Greek. I would have the Aramaic one, and make sure you've got a Catholic Bible, which is the Douay Remy. That's that one over there. If you look at my finger, that's the Douay Remy Bible there. That's the interlinear one there. And the Aramaic one is over there. But ultimately, I started out with the King James version of the Bible, and I'm not saying do that. I don't, but the fact is reading it is important, more than which version you have, I think. Uli Ram says, lasagna is practically speaking an excuse to eat lots of meat and cheese. The pasta is an edible spoon. Yeah, and I'm not too keen on the cheese either, so. William Poole says, Protestants really start to get on my nerves after a while. Only can stand so much of them. The way that they believe their own personal interpretation today is the correct one is so heretical to me. It is. It's not just heretical, it's stupid. It's literally retarded. You have to be a moron to believe that everybody was wrong for 1,500 years until a German of Jewish descent, because read up on where actually Martin Luther comes from, and you can do that by you can go on my blog and type in Martin Luther, and you'll have plenty of information. But Miles Mathis has done a whole, that guy likes genealogy, and he's done a whole thing on Martin Luther and where he came from and why he did what he did. But you have to be a complete moron to think that there was one school of thought for 1,500 years, and then some German that likes to rape maids and bang nuns and be heretic and tells you to swear and says that reason is the whore of the devil. That's the founding principle of Protestantism, that you must abandon reason. Yeah, that guy got it right. And according to the Protestants, they know this because what Luther did is God breathed. And I want to know, and I keep asking this question, nobody answers me. How do you know? Because if Bruce Jenner, who now would like us to call him Caitlyn, decides to change the Bible and take some bits out, like Martin did, and change some other bits, like Martin did, and then he says, well, this is the version of the Bible. How do you know that's not God-breathed? Because in my estimation, everything that Protestantism has done is not God-breathed at all. It's devil-farted. It's all devil-farted. It's not God-breathed, it's devil-farted. And I can back that up. They can't, so. Wooly Ram says, Null lore is gruesome, utter savages. Yes, they are. Gnolls are scary, scary creatures, yes. Dungeons and Dragons is, I wish I had a team of people that, it's so difficult because it'd have to be my brother because he played with us, and a couple of people I haven't spoken or know anything about for the last 20 years probably or more. It's difficult to get a good team of Dungeons and Dragon players that understand, that have been there from the old days. Kind of like playing Elite from when you were trading spice and slaves when the other boy wasn't even a twinkle in his father's eye. On a 32K BBC machine where there was 3 of us to do all the buttons because there's too many of them. And now they play some fucking fancy, colorful, movie screen type shit. And they think that's Elite. They don't know. But yeah, if I had a team of guys to play proper Dungeons and Dragons, that would be awesome. William Poole says, also, how they believe they are the only true Christians to ever live. Shake my head. The whole history of Christianity means so little to them, other than a few cherry-picked points. Again, you ask the Protestant, they're like, oh, they're doing Crusader memes. I'm like, why are you using a Crusader meme? Who were the Crusaders? Who were the Crusaders? Catholics. Oh, in the year 500. What happened in the year 500? Oh, well, Justinian or Constantine, they converted Christianity to pagan. No, we had popes before that. There was popes before Constantine. Popes existed. Nobody had anything to say about it. They all agreed the Pope was the final arbiter of everything. For over 1,000 years, everyone agreed with that. But no, some drunk German fat monk that liked to bang nuns. He's right. please. Luis Vega says, what do you think about the Ethiopian Bible? I don't. I have no idea about it. I have no interest in it. I've lived in Africa for 25 years. I've never been to Ethiopia, but I've got enough Bibles. I don't need to know about the Ethiopian Bible. I doubt that that's really the thing that's done anything, because, again, big picture, guys, seriously, look at the big picture. Who did what? Just take a stroll through any city in Italy, any, and look at the churches. Just walk into like 4 churches anywhere in Italy. That's Catholicism, okay? What did the Ethiopians do? Did the Ethiopians convert all of South America? No, don't think so. Did they convert anyone in Africa? Not really. So, yeah, big picture. Look at their fruits. Wooly Ram says a Catholic commentary is essential, otherwise you're lost at sea. Yeah, well, that's generally true of the Bible as a whole, because if you don't understand the context in which it was written, it's very difficult to appreciate the depth of some of the things that are mentioned in the Bible or in Catholic thought. You know, if you sort of think, oh, well, why don't priests have sex? That's got right, that's wrong, that wasn't like that. No, it was like that from the beginning. But you need to know the context, you need to understand where Christianity comes from, you need to understand what the rule was even before Jesus, you know, that relates to that, and so on. So yeah. Wooly Ram says modern D&D is safe and fuzzy. I don't know, I've never even bothered. But the original first and second editions are unsurpassed. You know what's unsurpassed? The original Dungeons and Dragons, which had many add-ons, right? The original Dungeons and Dragons that started with the basic and the modern, the advanced set, and which is encompassed the whole of proper Dungeons and Dragons is encompassed in this one book. You can buy it on DriveThruRPG as a PDF, and you can find some copies on eBay, like physical copies. This is the proper real Dungeons and Dragons, and in one book you got everything. So that would be my suggestion. Now, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which is what most people are probably familiar with. I started on Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, but then I went back to this, and this is much better. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition, you got to have several books and whatever, but yeah, this is much better because it's much more open-ended. It's, in a way, it's simpler, but it's also like more open. Like Advanced Dungeons and Dragons forces you to have 2 axes on the alignment: good and evil, and chaotic or neutral. And it tends to box in your character quite a lot. Originally, basic Dungeons and Dragons only had lawful, chaotic, and neutral. Now, that didn't say anything about good or evil. You could be a chaotic guy and be good. You can be but generally speaking, chaos is considered as evil because evil is chaotic. And lawful is considered as good because generally, you know, law and order are like how you build proper societies and so on. And there are some exceptions, but you know, it was much more freeform, much more gave your players and the dungeon master as well a better take on things, more I don't know, diverse way of doing things. Wooly Ram says in the old law, temple priests abstained from their wives during their on-duty rotation. Yeah, absolutely. Rural internet is acting up. Yeah, probably. Well, I've been going for 1 hour and 25 after the last glitch, so it is pretty late. I'll give you guys another minute or so while I finish my coffee and have some water actually. I'm probably starting to like vibrate now. I've had too much coffee. So, feel free to throw in a few more questions. I'm still awake thanks to the drug. Pitch black coffee with enough sugar to drown a mule. Why drown a mule? Well, because I've had enough coffee. Yeah. So yeah, if you got any more little questions, unless the rural internet is making it so that you only get this message about 10 minutes after I hang up. Oh, I got a little nose here that's bugging me. I need to go and kill it. All right, well, it looks like maybe the rural internet has killed us all. Or maybe we've reached the end of the stream. Ah, here we are. Yes. Itanimuli 100 says the Ark of the Covenant supposedly rests in Axum. Yeah, I've kind of been somewhat aware of that since, Indiana Jones, I guess. But I don't know. Let me put it this way. If you gave me an all expenses paid in luxury, not just economy, if you gave me an all expenses paid luxury trip to Ethiopia to go and check out about whether the Ark of the Covenant is there or not, I'd be hesitant to take you up on it a little bit. Might go for it, if it's all super paid for and I get a fee, yeah. All sort of luxurious travel and I get a fee for going to check it out. Okay, I'd go for it. That's about how interested I am in it. So, yeah. Willie Ram says, do you think the Ark of the Old Covenant has any more significance? Well, let me put it that way. If I did go, on an all expenses paid trip and found some ark lying somewhere in some deep cave that's behind locked doors that nobody has been in for like hundreds of years, and I managed to get there and I see this giant ark there, I'll tell you what I wouldn't do. Touch it. Call me superstitious, but I'd be like, oh, Hassan, you're a Muslim, right? You don't care. You try and open that thing. I just want to see what happens when you. And if Hassan goes, and just lays flat out, I'd be like, oh, looks like we found it, boys. All right, close it back up and let's fuck off home. That'll be about it. Beyond the historical. I know what you're asking, Bully. I don't know. Is the answer. I don't think it matters to me personally. I think of it, I put that in a class of above my pay grade, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference for me. Cordell Mitchell says, great stream. I'm going to call it an evening. Thank you for entertaining my stupid questions. No, sir, you actually have never given me a stupid question, not even once. So no, I really appreciate you. And I'm not just saying that because of the very generous super chats that you send, which I very much appreciate. But no, I consider you one of the Crusader dudes that I wish lived close to me. Sedevacanta says, what are your plans for Lent? Well, my plans for Lent are to basically do all the things I'm supposed to do, like work-wise. There's a bunch of things I'm not really gonna speak about on streams and whatever that have to do with various bits of paperwork that needs doing. One of the things I managed to get done is my truffle farm now has the official, it's now in my name. It's a very long process, and there's some things I have to do for that. There's a bunch of other technical things that I'm doing that I need doing, like for the olive oil business, which has been delayed because I'm now finding out all the stuff. There's a guy in the United States that wants to partner up. He's a very solid dude. He's doing some digging for me on his side on what needs doing. We want to make it a proper ongoing business, so there's a lot of stuff to go, to do there. Just practical things that I have not been as diligent in getting done as I should for various reasons. Reasons that I'm not going to get into, but that are nevertheless real. And there's quite a few like personal things that I want to put on the list, but I'm not a particularly good Catholic, so my list for Lent, I try and keep it as simple as possible and as easy as possible because, build on success. And if I try to go too puritanical about it, I tend to like mess up and not be able to do it properly. So I don't know yet. I need to. Probably something to do also with like more regular prayer because my prayers are I do pray, regularly, but it's not. I don't set aside a specific time for it. And I've been wanting to build a little kind of shrine, but again, the time, the amount of time I can devote to it, the amount of effort I can devote to it is not a lot. So, and I don't want to do a shitty job of it. I want to do a decent job. So I don't know is the short answer. Luis Vega says it was fun and interesting as always. Thanks again for all you do. Thank you, sir. And again, please, if you enjoy my work or whatever, write me a review on Amazon or send me a review on an email that I can put somewhere, Or if you've done hypnosis with me and it's been good, and there's a bunch of you out there, do me a little testimonial. I haven't asked, because again, I'm shit at it. I do what I do and then I forget to like tell people, hey, spread the word. But I'm trying to remember to tell people a bit more, but I'd appreciate your help in it. Menelik and the Queen of Sheba. I read the Cabra Nagast. I haven't. Yeah, I don't know if I'll have time to do that anytime soon. So the Vacantus says, still not going to Ethiopia. Yeah, kind of with you there. Woolly Ram says, hand it over to the IMBC and let the priests sort it out. I don't think that the IMBC priests would have a necessarily very different take than I do on the Ark of the Covenant, which would be like, oh, so that's where it is. All right, close the door and leave it alone. Which, why would you want to fuck with it? Let's say, by whatever random bit of luck, you end up in front of the real, unquestionable Ark of the Covenant. What are you going to do with it now? What do you want to do with it now? As far as we know, anyone that touched it died instantly. What's in it? The emerald tablets of technology of how to build Giza Death Stars? What are you going to do with it? Sell it to a Jewish collector? I don't know. I would leave it the fuck alone. That's it. Matthew Clark says about the Uranus earlier. Love you, Kurgan was just lonely. Matthew Clark, I don't know. Did I miss? I don't know what you're talking about, mate. Oh, I see. Oh, no. Oh, I don't know. Matthew said something. Don't forget about Uranus. I don't know. Talking about the planets. I don't know, dude. I didn't even see it. I missed a couple of comments probably, but yeah. It's an interesting life, and I think the next couple of years are going to be very interesting. Oh, by the way, I'm going to probably blog on this, but while you're here, those few stragglers that are just got nothing better to do with your lives than listen to me pontificate about all sorts of subjects in the voiceover of a 1940s newscaster that's high on crack, I'd like to tell you that I believe that World War III has been averted, most likely. It's unlikely that we're going to be bombed with nukes by anybody. Mostly because Russia has completely kicked the shit out of Ukraine and NATO and America. And the second front that's opened up in Israel is draining power and influence from America and the people that run America, who are not Americans. So, I think war in Europe has been averted, but unfortunately, the puppets that are supposedly representative of the government of the European Union, and I include Germany, Italy, Switzerland, which is not part of the European Union, but nevertheless, France, Spain, Portugal, Hungary, Romania, all of those little, even East Bloc countries, Greece, and so on. England, of course, primarily England among them, but also Norway, Sweden, Finland, and so on. The puppets, representative of our supposed government, are still being run by the non-Americans that run America. As a result of which, unfortunately, we're stuck with these evil bastards and their bullshit policies. Oh, I knew he's a tough one. I actually hit him, man. But he's still flying. Okay. There, you bastard. And another stink bug. Oh, and another one here. There we go. That's two. Where do they come from? And why do they come? Oh, the light. They come here because of the light. So yeah, I think the people who run America have kind of run out of material power. But unfortunately, they still have a lot of soft power. They still control all the people that run Europe, or that pretend to run Europe. So, and I'd really like us to get out from under them once and for all. So I don't know. I don't know how that would work out, other than a slow degradation of like economic just shittiness that is gonna go on for decades, which would mean that myself and my children, unfortunately, would be in a not great position. But I don't know that it would be better anywhere else. You know, like some parts of South America, sometimes I think, oh, you know, if I was in the middle of the forest in Brazil, maybe I'd be cool. But there's always gonna be shit wherever you are. So I don't know. I think I'm not sorry that I am where I am. I think I'm probably in one of the better places that I could be. But I also realize it's not the only place. You know, Italy is not the only place. I do think I'm in one of the best places I could possibly be, and I do believe that if I manage to, like, you know, get other people to move here and be near me, and we can make a real big difference even as a small community of sedevacantists. You know, what I'm talking, half a dozen families will make a big impact here. So I think that's kind of how I'm looking at it. But yeah. Oh, and I see there's some more comments. The arc is outer space. Prove me wrong. I have no interest in doing so. And Itanium says, yeah, probably next to Uranus. Okay. I think the chat is devolving here. Dang, could have used a break from my job. I'm not sure what you mean, Bully Ram. A break from your job? What, like studying the Ark of the Covenant? I don't know. Gauging Star Spangled Banner rewrite. Okay. Holy Ram says World War III was cancelled by Slavic patience. Yeah, yeah. World War III was cancelled by Slavic patience. I gotta say, I am not happy about the whole increasingly more digitized, more police state, and more controlled way that everything seems to be going. There needs to be a crash for that to end, and that crash is not going to be pretty if it comes. If there isn't a crash, the creeping tyranny of like digital money, digital face recognition, everything, um, increased taxation, increased rules, increased red tape is just gonna keep growing and growing and growing. But at the same time, so is like illegal and random immigration, and so is the degradation of systems, which is an interesting thing, because if you look at South Africa, they're about 10 or 15 years ahead of us in terms of that, where a people that basically cannot continue to keep the infrastructure going for, you know, whatever similar or different reasons, And once that starts to happen, you get brownouts, you get unreliable electricity, you get an absolute shit show when it comes to like justice and legal systems, which is already the case in most of Europe anyway. Um, and America's a complete joke with regard to that, of course. So it's not fun, it's not nice. And in South Africa, you kind of a little bit insulated from that if you are able to surround yourself by an almost militaristic private companies that have hardcore security. There are areas in South Africa, businesses that I was talking to a guy down there not too long ago that was talking about they had like 48 deaths. So 48 criminals, or that got killed on site on in particular areas that this guy's firm protects. If it was anywhere else in the world, it would be front page news. In South Africa, it's just like, he had to bring it up to the board of directors and say, "Do you realize there's like 48 dead bodies that we've had in the last just this year?" And everybody's like, "Yeah, it's quite a lot, isn't it? Oh, maybe we should do something." So. But the thing is, in Europe, it's a lot more difficult to create those kind of private enterprise structures because they tend to be all government controlled. So that's the downside of the European, that they try and limit your ability to organize in order to defend yourself. And that's part of the plan, of course. So I don't know, is it better to be like a little enclave in a country where you're the basic foreigner and, the entire population eventually is going to turn against you, kind of like what happened in Zimbabwe? I think that's a recipe for disaster. Or is it better to be in a country where like that's not going to happen, but the people that like lord it over you are going to increasingly squeeze you to death? Pick your poison. I don't know. Sedevacantis says Kurgan 4, niggling little bug 0. The Catholic land movement is picking up steam apparently. Second annual conference was this year in the eastern US. Okay, I don't know what that means. And I don't trust the so-called Novus Order Catholics because they're responsible for bringing in like completely foreign invaders, really. Never mind, they're actually gang members that are like just crossing the border in the United States willy-nilly, and in Europe too. I think Europe is in a much better position than the United States, but still, it's not good wherever you are. So anyway, if that is all, I'm gonna call it a night because I think we're probably in the 3-hour mark or somewhere like that. Hope the farm is going well. Are you selling your olive oil currently? Well, that's the intent. I sell it to like people around here or whatever, but I want to be exporting it to other countries, which is a bit of a problem because of how the postage system works and if you want to like do it in a sustainable fashion, you have to like send through quite big shipments, and then repackage them and send them out in the country where you're exporting it to. So the intent is to try and do that for the UK and the USA. So we're looking at all the paperwork required to do that and so on. So it's going to take a little while, but yeah, eventually I will be selling the oil. Anyway, I'd like to thank all of you for a nice, entertaining stream for me too. I appreciate your questions and so on, and I appreciate your support. So those of you that are interested, please go and buy the Crusades. If you want the hard copy, wait another week or so, maybe a few days, maybe a couple of days, maybe a week. And there'll be a hard cover version on Amazon, which you can just type in my name on Amazon and you'll get all the hard copy books will be there. All the ebooks, some of which are only available at the e-store, are from my e-store. Those are not. You can read it on Kindle. There's Kindle version, there's Apple Book versions, there's various versions for various e-readers, but they're not controlled by Amazon. They're controlled by myself. So Kindle shouldn't be able to go and change your version of my books because they're mine. They're not Amazon's books. So, and that's that. thank you all very much. I wish you all a good night, and may God bless every single one of you and your loved ones. Good night.